Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1437 of the War News stream. And tonight we have very big news, once again, especially out of the Middle East. We have seen that Iran, to their dismay, has rejected all further U.S. attempts to avoid full-scale war. Also, we've seen U.S. officials declare a national emergency over Cuba, over a Chinese and Russian threat. And also, Russian oil is collapsing even again under the strain, with a major situation breaking out with one of the largest Russian oil companies in the country. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news from around the world here on this day, as we have been able to hear of significant developments, not only within the Middle East, but also within Eastern Europe, East Asia, and the Americas as well. Basically, everywhere where there can be news, there is news today. We have been able to get significant news and developments from the Islamic Republic of Iran, as satellite photography that has emerged over the course of the day to the public has actually unveiled that the Islamic Republic of Iran has rebuilt the Isfahan and Natanz nuclear facilities and appears to be conducting some form of a salvage operation or a repair operation that has apparently brought these nuclear facilities back to an operational capacity. We do not know how long that sort of a existing state has lasted, whether it was something very recent over just the past few weeks, or whether that's been the case for months now, ever since the conclusion of Operation Midnight Hammer in the summer of 2025. But one thing has become incredibly clear, that the Islamic Republic of Iran is still rapidly working on their nuclear weapons and development programs, and are once again trying to get up to the level of having a testable nuclear warhead to eventually use. At the moment, we once again do not know a lot more information, rather than it appears that these facilities have been repaired or they're being salvaged, and there is some level of a nuclear research and development program still ongoing on the ground inside of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The Iranians, at the same time, have also completely rejected any attempted negotiation with the United States of America, and has announced that they will find war to be a more preferable alternative than trying to negotiate with the United States of America on their possibility of eventually becoming a nuclear-armed power. In the meantime, the United States of America has continued to move forces into the area, particularly that of the United States Air Force, while the Israelis have conducted bombings in southern Lebanon over the course of the day, and we've also been able to see that in Syria, there have been some additional developments with the Syrian civil war, with a ceasefire being announced between Jelani's regime and the remaining part of the SDF. Outside of that, we have also been able to hear of other major developments inside of the Russian Federation, as the oil giant Lukoil has declared that they will officially, as of today, be liquidating all of their foreign-held assets to the Cargill Investment Company within the United States of America. This is a significant blow to the Russian Federation and specifically their largest oil-producing company, Lukoil, as it is showing that the company was so close to entering bankruptcy and receivership that they actually had to liquidate all of their foreign assets to be able to keep the company afloat. Something that was mentioned at the very last part, or the last month of last year, and also at the very beginning of this year, and appears to have been finally followed through on. We've also been able to see that within the Americas, the United States of America has started to put more significant pressure on the Cubans and has announced a national state of emergency, or generally a strategic emergency, over Cuba and its alleged connections, or more so open and upfront connections, with the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China. Further south, the Panamanian Supreme Court has declared that the contract for the Hutchison Holding Group in Hong Kong to be able to operate the ports of Cologne and also Panama City is actually defunct and has kicked the company out immediately, with those two ports now being operated by the Maersk company. The Chinese have announced that they will be retaliating against this action, while simultaneously in Venezuela, general amnesty has been declared for all remaining political prisoners, which number around 500 or so. In China, a very interesting development happened today, as we were able to get another look at an incredibly rare and what appears to be a prototype example of a J-36, what we're believing to be a possible tactical bomber. What's even more interesting is that a Chinese citizen was able to sneak onto the airbase that was conducting the test and was actually able to take an unauthorized picture of the aircraft at a fairly close range, giving us a lot more detail and view of this aircraft, which has been incredibly secretive up until this point. Taiwan also conducted sea trials for their first indigenously built submarine today, which did pass with absolute flying colors, and we have also been able to see that on the front lines in Ukraine, the Ukrainian armed forces have been able to inflict a significant number of casualties onto the Russian Federation's armed forces and generally stop any advances over the course of the day. In short, we have a tremendous amount of news today, a humongous amount to say the least, and we will be making sure to get through each and every single part of this, starting with our largest stories first, and then moving our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night. And so, folks, with that in mind, we are going to be moving immediately into the area of the Middle East, as we did get major and fairly concerning news coming out of the Islamic Republic of Iran over today. Satellite photography has been shown online to show the Isfahan and Natanz nuclear facilities in their current state today, which appears to be showing us that the roofs of these buildings have actually been repaired. If you notice right here, this is actually the damage that was caused by the prior strike in Operation Midnight Hammer to the Natanz uranium enrichment plant, which is incredibly important for the Islamic Republic of Iran's abilities to enrich uranium ore into any grade of uranium, including weapons grade uranium, which is around a 90% purification level or even higher. As you can see, this is the satellite photography from right after the attack on Operation Midnight Hammer, and if we fast forward to the present day, we can actually see that this specific building has now had a cover put back over it, and we understand that the hole created by the GBU-57 MOP, which hit right off the camera just off to the right side of the frame, has also been covered up as well. At this moment, it is now being believed that the Islamic Republic of Iran is either conducting some form of a salvage operation for the remaining largely undamaged components in the Natanz uranium enrichment plant, or they have been able to effect proper repairs and somehow get the Natanz uranium enrichment plant back up and into operation. This is not a good situation for the United States of America, and this is also showing that the damage caused during Operation Midnight Hammer was not sufficient enough by any degree. Either way, no matter what is going on, the Iranians have clearly shown at this point that they are either able to salvage some equipment from the Natanz uranium enrichment plant, which is going in the face of the statements by the President of the United States, where he openly claimed that nothing would even be salvageable from these sites because the bombing was the largest ever seen in the face of the planet. Or this is generally going in the face of that statement as well, because they were able to immediately repair the site over the course of a few months and were able to get it back up and into operation again. We can also show.
It is possible that maybe it's superficial repairs. Like it is possible that maybe they just built like the sheds back on top of the prior locations where it was exploded. That is possible. But I would tend to think though that it seems like with the amount of time that's passed between the strikes in Midnight Hammer and now that they have had a chance to rebuild this. Because you got to remember, this is like priority number one for Iran. Like developing the nuclear program, that's always been their primary goal. So they would have all the motivation in the world to get back at this as soon as possible, to race to get one, because they know that a conflict was coming up again with Israel and the United States, and they're trying to get that nuke to get ready for it. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's simply more than just superficial. It could be a legit repair.
I believe that it could be a legitimate repair, and I'll also explain here after we look at this satellite photography as well, also showing that some of the buildings have still shown pretty much nearing complete destruction, but others have actually had the roof rebuilt over the area, including this one right here, center frame, which appears to be showing that some sort of repurposing has been done of some critical structures here at the site, and they're now bringing these back up to some sort of an operational capacity, or at least what would be assumed to be some level of an operational capacity. The Natanz uranium enrichment plant was one of the main targets that was hit during Operation Midnight Hammer in the summer of 2025, at the very end of the Israeli 12-day war against the Islamic Republic of Iran. However, once these strikes were conducted, the Israelis several weeks later then told the entire world that outside of the Natanz nuclear facility seen here was the Pickaxe Mountain facility that was attached to the Natanz uranium enrichment plant. This facility appears to have 4 tunnel entrances that go deep into the mountains. We believe that this is so deep under the mountain surface that whatever is within this mountain would not be able to be hit and damaged by GBU-57 MOPS. But nevertheless, this bombshell information alone let us know that the Natanz uranium enrichment plant had not been completely knocked out. In fact, it is actually believed, and was believed at the time, that the Pickaxe Mountain facility, right to the southwest of the Natanz uranium enrichment plant, may have actually been where the primary number of centrifuges and other critical components necessary to the development of enriched uranium may actually be. Because if we look at a fairly analogous facility also hit during Operation Midnight Hammer north of Qom, we can actually see the uranium enrichment plant here at Qom. This is the Qom uranium enrichment facility, and this facility had an almost identical layout to that of the Natanz uranium enrichment plant. Here is the main campus sitting within the desert right here, which then leads to an entrance of 4 tunnels, once again into another subterranean mountain complex that this one was known to be housing the actual centrifuges that were used to enrich the uranium. We believe the Natanz was highly similar, and so the reason why we're saying that the Natanz nuclear facility is largely operational is because if we're taking the footprint and knowledge that we have of the Qom uranium enrichment plant, and we are basically planning that down at Natanz as an analogous design and layout as the Qom uranium enrichment facility, these buildings here at the Natanz nuclear facility that are visible on satellite footage are most likely somewhat semi-critical or maybe even non-critical facilities that are not absolutely imperative to the production of any form of enriched uranium. The actual enriched uranium and the centrifuges that produce that enriched uranium are highly likely within the mountains, as this would ensure that no matter what, strikes by the United States or any other country would be incredibly difficult to pull off with a high level of success and cause irreparable damage to Iran's uranium enrichment capabilities. Considering that they did that in Qom, it's not out of the question to believe that this would be the exact same layout that would be seen here at the Natanz uranium enrichment plant, meaning that the buildings that they repaired probably had nothing to do with centrifuges, but are simply supporting buildings that are semi-critical to the operations happening inside of the mountain where the uranium is actually enriched. This lets us know that these nuclear facilities, including the nuclear campus in Isfahan, which has also had a decent amount of its buildings rebuilt, are still being used by the Islamic Republic of Iran, and they are still moving towards eventually fielding and testing some form of a nuclear warhead. We don't know how far along they are on that, and we do know that Midnight Hammer at a minimum had to have set them back to some degree, as a larger amount of nuclear scientists had been killed by the Israelis in the 12-day war, and the United States of America may have caused some significant damage and also fatalities once again within the Iranian nuclear research and weapons development programs of Iranian scientists, and possibly destroyed some critical information that may have been stored on computer servers here at Natanz, in Qom, or even within the Isfahan nuclear research campus, which was also hit. Nevertheless, it does appear that that a lot of people are talking at the moment about whether or not these nuclear facilities are back in operation and if the Islamic Republic of Iran is still pressing forward to develop nuclear weaponry. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so now that we can see that at least superficially, we can see and confirm from satellite view that Isfahan and the Natanz nuclear sites, they are getting rebuilt by the Iranians. So is the nuclear threat critical at this point yet again? 49% said yes, Iran is once again back in action, while 30% said no, it's simply only superficial repairs, and 14% said I'm 50-50 on the question. And I would say, based on what we can see in the satellite, the only thing we can confirm with certainty is Iran is certainly trying to repair at least the above ground facilities at these nuclear sites. But all the really critical parts of the actual nuclear operation were actually underground. Also, by the way, Pickaxe Mountain, I don't even think Pickaxe Mountain was actually struck last time, was it?
It was completely avoided.
Yeah, and Pickaxe Mountain, we're being told, is one of the primary sites where Iran is currently operating from when it comes to their nuclear development. So that's a huge oversight, and that's obviously going to be something I'd imagine the U.S. is going to go back and try to strike again if they start to strike the nuclear sites this time around. So I would say the nuclear threat is critical. Even without the buildings being rebuilt on the surface that we've seen here in the satellite view, it was still critical. It never really went away because the first round of strikes, while it was effective on some locations, it did not wipe out the entire nuclear threat inside of Iran. The generals and all the officials were telling the current U.S. admin to go for weeks of strikes, and that we only got one night of strikes. So it wasn't really what was needed to actually get the job done properly. I think they're going to try to remedy that this time around. So I'm with the 29%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to be with the 49%. I believe that the Iranian enrichment facilities are most likely back in operation, and to be entirely honest with y'all, just due to the fact that Pickaxe Mountain was not directly hit in the prior strikes during Midnight Hammer, I would have to be entirely frank with y'all. In my personal opinion, I never believed that enrichment capabilities stopped. I believe that they were greatly impeded for some time, but have most likely continued despite the difficulties and despite the damage that was caused during Midnight Hammer. We already know that a lot of intelligence agencies, including the Israelis, multiple European intelligence agencies, the Saudi intelligence agencies, and others, right after the strike, made it incredibly clear that they believe that no lack of complete enrichment abilities had been ceased inside of Iran, and that they were most likely continuing to produce enriched uranium and store it inside of Iran, even despite the Israeli and U.S. strikes. The president was the first to completely dispel these rumors, well, not really rumors, but more so intelligence briefings and statements, saying that they're completely lying because they hate him and they want to put him down, and they're nothing but haters, and haters be hating. So for that reason, it was completely destroyed, and it did not exist and was not operational. However, as months have passed, we have seen that the president is now once again returned, as of these past few days, to the fact that the Iranians are still running a nuclear research program, even in his public statements, which would let us know that our original assessments from multiple foreign intelligence agencies were correct, and that these nuclear facilities had not been completely destroyed and rendered inoperable. Not only that, the damage at Qom has been kind of up in the air, to be entirely honest. Qom is the only other uranium enrichment plant in the entirety of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and while the GBU-57 MOPS did hit over the tunnel complexes, we have never been able to get enough discerning proof to know how much damage was actually caused within the halls of this enrichment facility, and whether or not that actually completely knocked this one out of operation, or just heavily damaged it and reduced its operational capacity. That's something that we don't really know. One thing we do know, however, is that Pickaxe Mountain, which, mind you all, has the exact same footprint as the Qom enrichment facility, which is under a mountain, is most likely also where the centrifuges of the Natanz facility were, and they have not been hit at all. Not a single bomb hit the Pickaxe Mountain facility, so we would entirely assume, based off of that assumption, based off the fact that usually the Iranians put their centrifuges in subterranean complexes with the protection of a mountain overhead, these centrifuges never stopped operating, even in the midst of Operation Midnight Hammer. So I would highly believe that they are well within operational abilities again, and while their total volume of enriched uranium per month may have been reduced by, say, a third, they are still enriching uranium to a weapons grade, and they are still working forwards on nuclear research and development programs to eventually have a testable nuclear weapon.
Also, the one thing that we're missing right now is we're not being told by the United States officials exactly how close Iran is to finishing development of a nuclear weapon, because they clearly have intelligence on it. I think we all can understand. They've got probably a pretty strong idea of a timeline on a nuclear weapon being developed by the Iranian government, but they're not telling the public. And I don't understand really why, because that's not something that is necessarily, something that is like critical to national security. In fact, that would probably provide a justification, a very clear justification for secondary strikes, in addition to trying to basically rescue the Iranian people from their own government while they're getting slaughtered. So nobody really knows that answer to that question right there. And we've been told before it was 6 weeks, 8 weeks. 2 weeks. I mean, we've been told everything when it comes to how close they are to actually finishing a nuke. So, I mean, it's up to speculation. I don't know why they don't just come out and just say that, though. It seems like something that would probably be pertinent to tell the public, since we're about to probably go to war with Iran.
I would agree. And another thing that's also a little bit important, folks, because this is something that I have to mention here, because this is something that we have not ever done before on air. And of course, I'm not incredibly good at math or equations, but I would like to try and put the collective brains of the Lee Spring Army on this and see if we can get an answer to this at some point during the stream. These mountain entrances enter into some form of a complex underground. There are 4 tunnel entrances, meaning that at a minimum, there are 4 individual corridors under this mountain. There might even be more. But one thing that's incredibly telling is that right outside of the entrances of both of these tunnels are these large ballast, aka refuse piles or tailings piles, that were formed right outside the entrances of the tunnels, showing that whenever this tunnel boring operation was conducted, dump trucks would go into the area, take up the tailings, and then drive literally right out of the tunnel entrance and then dump them into a uniform pile. Based off of the height, depth, and also the amount of ballast here, or at least the tonnage of it, we could get a pretty good idea, considering that these tunnels have a uniform width, which we have seen in multiple videos of other bunker complexes throughout Iran, how deep these tunnels go. And if we divide that number by 4 of the absolute volume of ballast that was removed, the width of the tunnels, how much ballast that would be if those tunnels had been excavated properly, we could get a pretty good understanding of how deep and long these 4 separate tunnels are, and get an idea of how much collective square footage there is on the tunnel floors. That would give us a really good idea of how large this facility is underground, and that would also let us know what type of technology could be possessed here. If we could also see if we could do that at home and compare the two, that would be incredibly beneficial, because if the footprint of the tailings piles at both locations is incredibly similar, and I'm not really sure where they have the tailings piles out here, to be entirely honest with you all. I would have to do some digging to try and find those. I'm sure they're around here nearby somewhere. But if we could figure that out, we could get an idea of how large these facilities actually are, and if the one at Natanz is very similar in size to the one at Qom, then we would have the 100% understanding that that's definitely where the enrichment centrifuges are, and that means that nuclear operations never ceased.
Yeah, I would say so. There's a lot of unanswered questions right now about this whole thing, but I would say personally, even without knowing in the public exactly how close Iran is to actually developing a nuke, I would say the justification already exists to go in and deal with Iran, because we literally made a promise to help the protesters. Also, by the way, is the United States going to stand back while all these protesters get slaughtered in the streets by the tens of thousands and simply say, whatever, it's just whatever, while there's literally an ongoing nuclear threat that I'm sure the U.S. knows the exact timeline on it. Now would seem to be the preferable time to deal with it. So I think they're going to go for it, and hopefully it goes well.
I would hope so. Also, Mandy, I just saw someone say this, and I mean, this might be a bit of sacrilege, but I'd be willing to try it. Matthew, could you pull up really quickly an AI, and let's put this... Well, AIs don't really do math that well, do they?
It does. It does. What do you want to ask you?
I want to ask you this. I'm going to give you like the satellite measurements. I'm going to rough ball this sort of thing, or kind of eyeball it, and then tell you to we'll tell the AI to multiply this by 2, because I would like to know how much ballast, how much of this tailings are out here outside of these tunnels, because they have 2 different piles of 2 different sizes. They appear to have different lengths and widths and heights, and if we can figure out how much ballast that is and then tell the AI the average width and height of these tunnels, we could probably get a pretty good idea of how large this tunnel complex is at Pickaxe Mountain on air.
Okay, yeah. Tell me what you're wanting to calculate.
Okay, so first off, this is mound one. There's two separate mounds of two separate sizes, but mound one is 500 feet across. Well, 543 feet across to be exact. And then it
Okay.
is, let's see here, at its widest, it's 300 feet wide. And if we were to eyeball the height of the thing, it looks to be about 40 to 50 feet tall. So put it in as 45 or so.
And what about mound two?
And then mound two is, let's see here. It is about, let's see here, let me try and measure this, folks. It is about 686 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
And then, why the hell does it keep doing that? Let's see here. And then it is about 295 feet wide.
Yep.
And for simplicity, we'll say that this one's also 45 feet tall.
All right. Yeah, I'll get you that calculation in just a second.
All right, and so we're going to be waiting for that calculation, folks. And here's why I'm wanting to try and find this out on air. We didn't do this before the show. We're doing it right now live. If we can figure that out, I'm then going to give Matthew, after we get the answer here, the width of the tunnel and the height of it, which we're going to assume that the height is the same as its width, because a tunnel boring machine is usually a perfect cylindrical shape. Then once we get that, we will be able to put that into the AI, understand how long the total tunnel length of this entire complex is, and then we'll be able to get a square footage for the floor inside of this area, and then understand how big the complex is inside of the mountain. So Matthew, do we
So
have?
it's approximately 17,000 cubic feet between the two.
All right, so now let's go to one of these tunnel entrances, and we're only going to measure one, and then we're going to assume that all of them are a uniform width and height. So each tunnel is approximately, at least at its entrance, well, actually, it appears to be a roadway. They're about 24 feet wide. So put it in the AI. It's a 24 feet radius of these tunnels with a flat floor, and then to ask it based off of the tonnage or the cubic amounts of ballast that has been moved outside. How long could those tunnels be with all that earth being excavated? We're going to be getting that answer in the meantime, folks. It might be actually be wildly interesting here. And
So we're assuming here that we're missing some variables in this. By the way, like this is something that actually requires a lot of thought off there. This is very complex to do this on the spot, but roughly 2 to 2.5 miles long is roughly what we're looking at here.
So we divide that by 4. Every single one of these tunnels is probably about, let's see, 2.5 divided by 4. That would be, about a half mile, a little bit over a half mile each. So, I mean, this is quite an extensive amount of tunnels. I mean, if you're looking at that.
Also, by the way, for the people saying diameter, it got diameter, by the way. Like I didn't put it in radius.
Yeah, I said that incorrectly, folks. I'm trying to do this quick and spitball on air. But if they're all a half mile each, that means that each one of these tunnels, if they went in a straight line and then they also intersected with each other, that is about how long the average tunnel is under the Pickaxe Mountain facility. If we did all of our math correctly and all of it ends up being right, and of course this is a very rough estimation, but that's about how big these tunnels actually would be. That's how deep they are. These two go off from east to west in that same length, as well as the ones to the north going down to this length as well. So this is a fairly large complex. And considering that they're about 24 feet wide, this support building right here is about, let's see, 42 feet wide. So this would be about half the width if we were to take the average width of a normal Iranian tunnel that we've seen before. So these are fairly large facilities, as a matter of fact. Actually, if we did the math there, let me do this on my phone really quickly, folks, because we will be able to get a real good answer to this. So they're all about 2,500 feet or so in length each. We're going to cut it down to exactly about a half mile. And then they're about 26 feet wide. So we do 2,500 feet long by about 24 feet. Actually, it's not 26 feet, it's 24 feet wide. That means that each tunnel is about 60,000 square feet of floor volume. If you multiply that by 4, that means this entire complex under the mountain has about 240,000 square feet of usable volume and floor space inside of them.
Interesting.
So that's pretty large. I mean, that's huge. That's the size of a Walmart supermarket in usable floor space in this thing. It's definitely being used for uranium enrichment. They don't build tunnels that large, that long, and that sizable to have nothing being done inside of them rather than storing a truck or something along those lines.
Yeah, I would say so. It's definitely probably nefarious.
So I think we can all get the idea, folks, that considering that Pickaxe Mountain was not hit, and it has the floor volume inside the mountain of about a supermarket if we average all the tunnels out, they are clearly conducting refinement operations inside of Pickaxe Mountain because that facility is voluminous enough and large enough to be able to conduct those operations. I don't think anyone else has ever done that on YouTube or anywhere on the internet right now, is take the tailings piles and try and average that out. So I think we might be the first to give a very rough ballpark estimate of how big Pickaxe Mountain actually is.
I would say very rough. I would say take those numbers with a grain of salt, because we're missing a couple of variables. Also, by the way, when you calculate area, it's assuming a rectangle. So we're looking at cylindrical piles here. So they're a little bit different with the calculation, which is a little bit more complicated. So take the 2 to something mile like range with a grain of salt.
Yeah, also on top of that, these are on a slope, so it's of course going to be absolutely no height on the western side, but then it's about 40 feet tall on the eastern side. We would have to get all of that exact, but this is about the best approximation that we can give, and if it's even close to being somewhat accurate, this is definitely a big enough place to conduct centrifuge operations out of, no question about it. But anyways, with that, we are going to be moving on from that deep dive on air to figure that information out, and we are going to be moving on down and into Isfahan, as we were able to see that the IRGC is still conducting air defense tests around the city in preparation for eventual U.S. strikes. Someone's always gassing it in every clip. I don't know what it is. We also were able to hear outside of the area of Isfahan and moving us on up towards Tehran that it appears that the Islamic Republic of Iran has completely rejected negotiating with the United States of America. And according to the Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, or Arakchi, however you want to pronounce it, Iran rejects the American demands for a deal. So they are not willing to negotiate with the United States of America whatsoever. At all. We've also seen that another propaganda video has come out today. This one, I have to say, folks, was amazingly made, and Matthew's going to know this all too well, in GTA 5, because that right there is the little mountain around Los Santos that this air defense system's on.
Man, look at that. That's insane. Look at that.
Bro. This is ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, that looks like GTA physics, the way that broke apart.
Man,
I didn't even know you could mod it to have a B2 in there. It's kind of wild in itself, really.
Man, that looks like a B-21 Raider even. I mean, they went and got a B-21 Raider mod, an Iranian flag mod, and then an air defense mod, and then made a propaganda video. I mean, I can't, the Iranian propagandists, folks, are probably like the cheapest low-effort people on the planet, because they won't even really try and make anything original. They, put it in an AI slot mill, or they even go to GTA to make some propaganda. I mean, we got Iranian propaganda against the wicked imperialists of the United States before we got GTA 6. I mean, that really is something else right there, folks. That is really crazy, honestly. But anyways, moving on out of the Islamic Republic of Iran, a lot of people are talking about those air defense drills that are being conducted in places like Isfahan and elsewhere throughout the country, and are wondering if the strikes are going to be happening incredibly soon by the United States, and that's why the Iranians are trying to get in as much training and drills as possible before the strikes occur. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so we are seeing that Iran is continuing to hold major air defense exercises in their airspace that we have seen in the videos that we just watched. So the question is, how quick will Iran fold during the upcoming U.S. airstrikes that are likely imminent at this point? So 42% said they'll probably last maybe days, while 34% said probably a few hours, and 16% said they'll probably last a few weeks. And I would personally say that Iran will probably fold pretty quickly, because they're going up against a very powerful force, which is the United States Air Force, probably the strongest on the planet. And the Iranian Air Force is not very formidable. But at the same time, though, you got to factor in all their air defense. So we do know that with the Growlers, the electronic warfare aircraft being in the area, that will knock out some of the radars and also some of the guided missiles that are used to fire at aircraft. So that'll take out some of it, but they still have all the manual air defense guns on the ground that we got to contend with. So they have quite a few of those, and they will be operating those quite heavily. And in fact, I think most of the air defense exercises are actually with those manual guns that we're seeing in the videos. So I would say, based on what we saw last time, they will probably last a couple of hours against the United States. And then the U.S. will probably have air supremacy after probably a few hours, to be perfectly honest. That's a pretty short time frame, but we're deploying some of our most high-tech advanced fighter jets to go do the job. And I don't think Iran can contend with that with basic AA guns. That's going to be a bit of a doozy. But Enforcer, what say you?
Ah, yes, the old Gush guns. Really the pinnacle of Iranian air defense and the backbone of all of Iran's air defense networks. This is generally whenever you'll hear the live fire drills in the videos, this is actually what's off in the distance conducting the live fire drill. And what is so unique and neat about these folks is that they're completely useless in the modern day. Like, they're useless against most everything. Against helicopters at close range, this thing would be a threat. To everything else, though, it is not a threat. An Apache would be able to obliterate this thing with a Hellfire from about 20 miles away without even taking a scratch. They wouldn't even see the Apache because it would be too far away. Aircraft that would be conducting aerial operations of Iran wouldn't even be able to be touched by this gun because it wouldn't be able to reach them at about 30,000 feet, which is usually where U.S. military aircraft would be operating in that sort of an engagement. So I would say that the Iranian air defenses are most likely woefully under-equipped, under-trained, and understaffed to be able to actually conduct any proper form of air defense against the United States, because in the 12-day war, we saw that they could not conduct an air defense worth a damn. The Israelis ended up just flying right into Iranian airspace and literally hovering right over Tehran and Mashhad and elsewhere, just basically hitting whatever they wanted to and loitering over the area as long as they wanted. So there really is no reason to believe that Iranian air defense will pose a threat to the United States Air Forces, especially considering that our suppression of enemy air defense capabilities are far more advanced than what the Israelis are able to put up. And even with the Israelis having very little seed capabilities compared to us, they were able to overwhelm and destroy Iranian air defenses during the 12-day war and then start wiping the floor against them for about the next 11 days after that. So the U.S. will be able to wipe the floor against the Iranians air defense-wise every day of the week.
Yeah, and also, by the way, just for comparison, during the 12-day war that Israel and Iran had between those two with the war, it was actually just a few hours. That's all it took Israel to have air supremacy over Iran. It was just, I think it was 3 or 4 hours at the most. And then after those 3 or 4 hour period, the Israeli jets were operating without resistance whatsoever over Iranian airspace. And that's just the Israelis, by the way. I think they used, I think it was like 200 aircraft or so to strike the missile sites, the air defenses, and also command nodes as well across Iran. So they used quite a few aircraft. But I think with the current U.S. plan, which is extensive strikes across the whole country, that it'll probably be even more overwhelming than what the Israelis did during the 12-day war. And also, it could be possible as well that Israel might jointly attack Iran with the United States. So it could be a combination of both, it could be quicker than a few hours. It could be less than an hour if that's the case.
Yeah, I would agree. Because one thing that's going to be really interesting, folks, is that in the opening of an aerial engagement with the Iranians, if we target their air defenses first, we're going to send out 2 different variants of aircraft to be able to deal with the Iranian air defenses. There will be a lot of other aircraft up in the air during that operation, but these are the 2 that would deal with ground air defenses. Aircraft like the EA-18G Prowler. I believe we also have that Cessna, let's see, what is it? A Cessna Citation 550 that was modified into an EW aircraft over there as well. I forgot the designation for that one. And then you would also have the F-16CJs. And let me go show you all one of those because these are actually a little bit interesting. These are the specialized variant of the F-16 that are used for suppression of enemy air defense operations. And you can tell because of that big old missile right there on the wing pylon. That's an AGM-88 HARM, which is a anti-radiation missile, or a homing anti-radiation missile. That's what the HARM in the name stands for. These are able to pick up the radioactive, well, not really the radioactive, but the radiation pulses of ground-based radars, and is able to lock on to them. This F-16 is also specialized to be able to help out that AGM-88 by first locking onto it, and then they're able to fire the AGM-88 HARM a lot like an AIM-120. It's a semi-homing sort of a radar system that is also inside of the HARM, and then it's able to guide itself to that air defense unit and hit its radar, knocking it out. If an air defense unit does not have a radar in a modern air defense scenario, they're basically blind. That's why a lot of these Gush guns won't count for anything, because they're counting on the operator's eye eyes to be able to spot a target. And in the modern day, that is basically useless. Most aerial engagements happen over dozens of miles, and also the United States Air Force would be able to hit one of these gush guns from about 30 miles away with one of their aircraft, meaning that unless if that aircraft is high enough in broad daylight to be able to create a contrail that enemy aircraft gunner can see, there's going to be no way for him to actually engage that. And on top of that, being 30 miles away, these little gush guns just don't have the range to hit an aircraft at that distance. They maybe can fire out about 2 miles, but that's about it. And even then, that's a stretch. So that would generally be how our opening air operations would be conducted, at least against ground air defense forces. And then after that, you would see that the airspace would generally be opened up to a wide variety of operations, including F-15Es and other aircraft that would actually start to conduct air-to-ground operations against the actual high-priority targets. But we actually have breaking news coming out of this moment. And Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so we have some breaking news that has just come out. In fact, it's a little bit some bad news, actually. We have just gotten word that allegedly Saudi Arabia will not allow U.S. forces to use Saudi Arabian airspace or bases in a strike against Iran. So that apparently just came out right now, which is obviously not a good thing. We were hoping that they would let the airspace be used, but it sounds like they are going to refuse, which is a little bit strange because the Saudi Arabians also came out midday today and stated that the U.S. must attack Iran because if they don't, then the Iranians will be further emboldened to attack everybody in the region. So that's a bit strange. The Saudi Arabians are encouraging an attack on Iran, but yet at the same time, they're not willing to let their airspace be used to attack Iran. It's a little bit of a contradictory situation there, which doesn't make much sense, but that appears to be the case. So they seem to have flaked out based on the sounds of it. But Enforcer, what say you?
Oh, that's fairly interesting here. I also don't know what's going on because every time I'm trying to get Twitter up, it's doing this to me, and I've been refreshing it about 6 times, restarted the page and everything, and it's still doing that for some reason. But outside of that, I would say that that is a little bit odd because all the news that we were getting earlier in the day was actually showing that the Saudis were encouraging action, at least against the Islamic Republic of Iran, and we had also heard that a major Middle Eastern ally that we assumed were the Saudis had actually approved for U.S. military operations against Iran using their airspace and territories. So a little bit interesting with that. I guess the major Middle Eastern ally might be someone else, probably even the Kingdom of Jordan, I would assume at this point, because the Saudis have just refused the U.S. military to operate in offensive actions against the Iranians from their ground or from their skies. I would assume that the only other country that is allowed for that action would be the Kingdom of Jordan, I would assume at least.
Yeah, you would think so. It's just a little bit strange. Like it seems to be that the Iranians are actually scaring away a lot of our partners in the region, which is to be expected. Like we know that there's people in the region that are going to be scared of Iran, and it looks like Saudi Arabia is going to be one of those countries. So hopefully there's not more countries that pop up like this saying that they won't allow it to be used for an attack, because we have to have cooperation. And also, I mean, it's in Saudi Arabian interest for Iran not to be a threat. So it's a little bit honestly, if I'm being honest here, a little bit crappy they're saying that, because the U.S. is doing a favor for the region and not just ourselves and not just for Israel. We're doing a favor for the entire region by getting rid of that regime. So the fact that some are just bowing out, I mean, that's pathetic.
Yeah, it really is something else, I'd have to say. We'll have to continue to watch these developments, folks, with Saudi Arabia, because they might change their mind at the last minute due to some form of pressure. But we'll get into that here in a minute, because we're actually going to be moving on down into Saudi Arabia, speaking of this major development at the moment, as we did hear that earlier in the day, the United States had actually approved a sale of weapons to the Saudi Arabians. The U.S. State Department had approved a potential foreign military sale to Saudi Arabia for PAC-3 MSC, which are missile segment enhancement missiles, and related equipment, with an estimated value of $9 billion US. So there is a possibility that if the United States wanted to get the Saudis on our side, we could go, oh, that's unfortunate. I think we're going to have to deprioritize you for these PAC-3s. Oh, what a shame. And then the Saudis might go, oh, well, on second thought, you can actually use our airspace. We could do something like that. You don't want to go about it directly saying, the Saudis are really stupid people. We're going to stop giving them missiles, because then they might allow us to use their airspace for operations, or then they might double down and then also start distancing themselves from the United States, which isn't really a good move. So we'll have to see on that one. But we also have been able to hear as well, earlier in the day, a lot like Enforcer Matt was just talking about, and this post seems to be I don't know what's going on with Twitter on my end, folks. It looks like
I think Twitter is having a little bit of an issue. It's not having an issue for me, oddly enough. Like, it's working just fine on my end, but it looks like other people in the chat are saying that they're having a problem with it too. So it could be a regional outage.
Well, folks, looks like we might have to be flying blind tonight with a lot of the Twitter posts. But nevertheless, the Saudi Arabians earlier in the day had actually encouraged action by the United States of America against Iran, claiming that if action was not conducted against the Iranians soon, it would embolden the regime and they would take further hostile actions against multiple nations in the area, including the Saudi Arabians. That's a little bit interesting, though, because they made that statement earlier today, but then just literally right now, they then make the statement that the Islamic Republic of Iran is not that much of a threat to the point that their airspace should be used to fight them, and they're going to just kind of sit it out and hope for the best, at least for the United States being able to operate from other countries and other airspaces within the region. So a little bit interesting with that one, I'd have to say, and it is also giving us a general idea, at least for now, that the Islamic Republic of Iran is not that big of a threat, at least in the eyes of the Saudis, although the Saudis absolutely hate the Iranian government. They're apparently not willing to go that far to allow the strikes by the United States of America against the Islamic Republic of Iran. But moving on from that, folks, it is also time for us to get to another bit of news. We were able to confirm that CMV-22 Ospreys of the USS Gerald R. Ford, the USS Abraham Lincoln. I'm sorry, everyone. The fact that Twitter might be just crapping out on me right now is kind of distracting me a little bit. But we were able to see these CMV-22 Ospreys of the United States Navy here at this little airfield at Duqm. Duqm is a little tiny town. I mean, it really is almost non-existent. And if I can find y'all that airfield, I will show y'all what we were able to see today. Well, where is it? Here it is. Here's Duqm, and this is where the CMV-22 Ospreys were seen. Here is the area of the airport. There's the gate. These CMV-22 Ospreys were right here. The reason why they are at Duqm, folks, is because the folks on the Lincoln ran out of chicken nuggies, and for that reason, they had to go make a grocery stop over at Duqm with the CMV-22s to go grab some chicken nuggies, bring them back to the carrier, and keep up morale so that way when the strikes happen, everyone has a smile on their face on the Lincoln. So, I'm just kidding, folks. They're there for other reasons, but they were seen on satellite photography, which does confirm that the USS Abraham Lincoln is still nearby, because if the Abraham Lincoln was to leave, they would get these CMV-22 Ospreys right back to the Lincoln so that way they're not left behind. But moving on out of that little news of the position of the USS Abraham Lincoln, we have also been able to confirm that further U.S. airlifts have been conducted into the Middle East today, including 10 C-17 Globemasters and 2 C-5 Galaxies. That's a big boy right there. And I wonder if we looked out in the world right now. Oh, look at that! A C-5 Galaxy is leaving Al-Udeid. Well, I wonder what it got done dropping off. I'm curious about that, you know? I would wonder. I would be curious, indeed. We can also see that another C-17 actually is flying, flew from Spangdahlem to what appears to be an airbase south of Riyadh. I forgot the name of that airbase. And now they're flying back to what would be Ramstein Air Force Base, I believe, or Spangdahlem, apparently. And then they'll be flying probably back to the United States to go pick up more equipment. Right now, at this time of day, we can also see another KC-135 Stratotanker making its venture across the Atlantic, along with another C-5 Galaxy. This time, crazily enough, Matthew, from Birmingham, Alabama, at the Shuttlesworth International Airport.
Yeah, look at that, taking off from the old hometown, I guess you could say.
Now, if we were to use our little brains here and click them together, the nearest thing to Birmingham that's of any military significance would be the Anniston Army Depot. So if I was to take a guess here at what's going on here, something's been moved from the Anniston Army Depot to the Shuttlesworth International Airport. It was, the C-5 Galaxy was probably taxied over here to this ramp where the Alabama Air National Guard has a refueling air wing. They then loaded something onto the C-5 Galaxy, and then they took off and started flying out into the Middle East. I couldn't really tell you all what was at the Anniston Army Depot. Most of the time it's Abrams and Bradleys, and you wouldn't really see those used in this sort of an operation. So it was probably something something else a lot more low-key that you really don't hear about that's put into Anniston Army Depot that was transported out of the area today. So that's a little bit interesting. Very interesting, I'd have to say. A little mention for the state of Alabama. We can also see the funnily named U-Haul 85 C5 Galaxy also flying down to Florida at the moment and landing in Tampa. I gotta say, those guys were actually a little bit, a little bit smart there, Matthew. A U-Haul. Get it? Because they're hauling.
I'll tell you what, they're hauling all the way down to Florida. How about that? They're doing that DIY. They're doing it themselves.
Man, meanwhile, it appears that the Army has a lot of helicopters flying around Dothan, and we can also see what looks... a TC-135W Stratolifter appears to be flying out of Las Vegas, and possibly towards UCOM as well. That's a little bit interesting. And we also have some more Stratotankers, mostly normal activity around the rest of America. But could you get us any information, Matthew, on this TC-135W Stratolifter?
Yeah, like what the aircraft used for?
Yeah, I haven't really heard of this variant of the 135 base platform before. Do you think we could find something on that?
So this specific one here is generally a training derivative of the normal RC-135 recon aircraft. It's mainly for training and test missions, mainly for the most part.
Huh, that's interesting. So it might not be flying into the Middle East then, I would assume. So a little bit interesting on that one as well. But anyways, with that, that's the current airspace situation around the world right now. And it does appear that at least at the moment, the United States is still making sure to truck them on in. U-Haul, you get it. But we also have been able to hear some other major news inside the Middle East as well, including the Israelis today now saying that apparently they don't have any idea that strikes are imminent, although they've been saying opposite for the past few days and the past few weeks. So I would generally doubt that one. Additionally, we have also been able to hear that within southern Lebanon, the Israelis conducted a couple of airstrikes today. Here's one of them.
Oh, they only know the big ones.
Excuse me. I need my prosecution to be held off. I've got to go bomb Lebanon.
They call this the prosecution postponer. That's what they call that one right there. That's old fashioned. Look at that.
Yeah, bro. They had on the written on that bomb in chalk. They called it the postponement, bro. Like they said.
Honestly, that's a pretty menacing name for a munition. They ought to call it that.
Man, honestly. Also, we did get a little bit of news, folks, out of Syria. Just a little bit of an aside here. That another ceasefire has been written up by al-Jilani's regime, but this time it appears the SDF actually did accept this one. So I'll read you all off the official statement of the SDF, and I'm going to be honest with you all, folks, I think that Twitter's having a little bit of an issue today. Maybe it has something to do with going to the wildest party. Wink, wink. Anyways.
I wonder if it has something to do with, like, maybe strikes are coming up or something like that. I wonder.
I wonder. I'm curious here. But here's what the Syrian Democratic Forces said. Agreement text between the SDF and the Syrian government. An agreement has been reached to cease fire between the Syrian government and the Syrian Democratic Forces under a comprehensive agreement, with an understanding on a phased integration process for the military and administrative forces between the two sides. The agreement includes the withdrawal of military forces from points of contact, the entry of security forces affiliated with the Ministry of Interior into the centers of the city of Al-Hasaka and Kamdishi, and a start of the integration process for security forces in the region, and the formation of a military brigade comprising 3 brigades from the Syrian Democratic Forces, in addition to the formation of a brigade for the Kobani forces within a brigade affiliated with the Aleppo government. The agreement also includes the integration of self-administration institutions within the Syrian state institutions, with the confirmation of civilian employees. An agreement has also been reached on the settlement of civil and educational rights for the Kurdish people, and guaranteeing the return of the displaced to their areas. The agreement aims to unify the Syrian territories and achieve the full integration process in the region by enhancing cooperation between the concerned parties and unifying efforts to rebuild the country. That was from the Media Center of the Syrian Democratic Forces, authorized on the 30th of January of 2026, which was today. So it appears that the Syrian Democratic Forces have entered another ceasefire, once again, largely a capitulation. This basically says that the SDF will cease to exist and will be absorbed by Jilani's regime into the greater part of Syria. So it appears that at least for now, a second capitulation has been issued again by the SDF. A lot of people are wondering whether that will last long or not. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so is the ceasefire going to hold this time? Last time it didn't really hold that long, and then we saw absolute mayhem breaking out in the streets. They were literally just like the streets were full of machine gun fire basically after the last ceasefire. So that one didn't work out. But do you think this one will work out? 81% said no, it's not going to last long at all. Pretty much nobody has hope in this. 9% said yes, the ceasefire will hold, and 11% were unsure. And I gotta say, it's a little bit tough to say because the SDF is kind of like it kind of operates a little bit like Hamas and Hezbollah to a certain extent. Not that they're a terror group, but they kind of operate like that. They have factions within the SDF that may not like the ceasefire, and they may decide to do their own thing. That's the base of the reference I'm trying to make here. So to me, it seems like it probably won't last long. It doesn't seem to be the MO for Syria for things to last long, like peace agreements and ceasefires. It seems to be very short-lived pretty much all the time. So I'm with the 80%. I don't really have a whole bunch of hope in it. Maybe it'll hold, but I kind of doubt it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would be with 80%. This is not going to last. None of these have lasted so far. And Jelani has probably done this and got them to agree to this again to start another offensive against them and then try and completely crush him. We know that they have no intention of peacefully integrating the SDF into Jelani's regime, and Jelani has no intention of doing that. This won't last for any longer than maybe a few days. If this one lasts any longer than a few days, color me shocked. I would just be floored, literally, if that happened. So with that, I hope that addresses that well, at least that ongoing development within the region. And with that all put together, I have to get you all one little tidbit out of the United Arab Emirates. And Matthew, it is so good that we did not take that offer to go to the UAE and go to Abu Dhabi for that arms expo that one time, given this news.
I got to tell you this before you get into this news, before you deliver the bombshell. I was telling you the other day, I said there are some states in the Middle East that you got to look out for that are allegedly allies with the United States. You got to do a double take. You said the other day, we were talking and debating this topic. We said if Iran is toppled and that Ayatollah's regime is gone, who's going to be left to fund the proxies? And I said there's some groups out there, some states which are quote unquote allies with the United States that would happily throw some dollars their way. And I think this is kind of a little bit along the lines of the same type of betrayal.
Well, let's find out. Let me get y'all this and read this to y'all. The kingdom has too long treated its robust counterterrorism activities as a blank check for anti-American activities in other areas. The UAE remains far too close to China for a privileged American ally. A mix of 3 active and former U.S. government sources have told the Washington Examiner that the United Arab Emirates has provided Russia with the identities of U.S. intelligence officers. The UAE also remains a global safe haven for organized crime groups and corrupt officials. Finally, this union of 7 Islamic Emirates has supported destabilizing groups in Sudan and Yemen. So basically saying that the United Arab Emirates has ratted out a couple of U.S. intelligence officers that apparently worked with them at some point in the area to the Russians. And so it appears that the United Arab Emirates isn't really our greatest ally. I'd also tell you that they're wildly questionable. And I've actually said this on air about the UAE because they're the ones who supported the Hadrami elites inside of Yemen, which were a very questionable group. And they're also the ones that support the RSF in Sudan, which ended up killing about 80,000 people in about a single week in Al Fashir after they ended the siege of the city in their own victory. The United Arab Emirates is a very suspect country, in my honest opinion. I don't really I'll be completely frank with you. I really don't like the UAE. I don't really like anything about them. Like, I don't like Dubai. I don't really like Abu Dhabi. I don't really like the fake glitz and glamour that they go for, and also how they operate their foreign policy, because they generally fund wildly questionable groups within the regional area, like the Hadrami elites and also the RSF in Sudan. And so this isn't anything that's wildly shocking coming out of the UAE. I mean, it's disappointing, I'd say, for sure, in my honest assessment. But it's nothing too shocking. I mean, they're honestly kind of like a little bit wacko. But outside of that, it is something
Would you change your mind? Would you change your mind about the idea that some of these states that are allegedly allies with the United States would actually end up supporting the proxy groups if Iran fell?
Well, with that news coming out of the UAE today, I mean, I would kind of change my mind a bit. I would say it's getting a lot more likely that could happen.
Yeah, I'm still a strong believer in that, by the way. And it can't lob specific allegations yet because they haven't had the chance to really go for it. The moment that Iran falls, because right now they're using Iran is basically an opportune, basically convenience. Basically, is the best way to put it. Iran is able to fund these groups, and all the other states that are allies with us can claim plausible deniability that they're really not participating in that because Iran's doing it on their behalf. But if Iran disappears and Iran's not funding the proxies, then these other states either have to jump in or the proxies die. And I still think they're not going to let the proxies die. They're going to step in and fund them so that way they keep them alive.
Also, I see some people saying, "What the hell is the UAE even?" like after the publication talked about the 7 different emirates that united together to create the country, the United Arab Emirates is a little bit complex. If anything, to be honest, it's really more like a confederacy than anything because there isn't really like an extremely strong like centralized government. It's pretty much 7 princes that have banded together to create a unified kingdom basically. That's kind of the best way that I can explain it. Let me go actually pull y'all up the government of the UAE, so that way I can maybe get a better explanation for this than what I'm even giving. So damn, their government symbol is busted. I mean, for them to have all that money to build the Burj Khalifa, that's the best they could do.
It looks like some crap that maybe like some clip art would do, like from like Microsoft or something.
Man, it looks like they're about to have President Snow announce the Hunger Games with this thing. It's like, good lord, it's like that's rough. Or the Patriot Games, whichever way you look at it. But anyways, let's see. Oh, it's a semi-constitutional monarchy. So basically, it's just a dictatorship of like 7 dudes in trench coats. That's basically what this is. So let's see here. Oh, so it's a federation. So it's a federation is very close to being a confederacy of a sort of 7 different monarchies, and here are the monarchies that actually run the UAE: Abu Dhabi, Ajman, Dubai, Fujairah, Ras Al Khaimah, Sharjah, and Al Quwain. So those are the 7 monarchies that pretty much make up the UAE's government. Outside of that, though, there really is basically no government. They basically run the country as a dictatorship of 7 houses, and that's it. So that's the government of the UAE. Very similar to a lot of other governments within the Middle East, because to be entirely frank with y'all, most Middle Eastern cultures on the Arabian Peninsula have never seen a functioning or operational democracy, and there's only a few exceptions to that, with Iraq being the only one, and that one hardly even functions right. Most of them end up becoming absolutist monarchies. Saudi Arabia operates in that sort of a principle. So does Qatar and Bahrain, as well as Kuwait, including the Kingdom of Jordan, and also the UAE, which is a federation of multiple different monarchies that banded together. So that's nothing.
That's because it's most compatible with the religious situation there. That type of governance is actually what works best with that religious ideology, actually, because the religious ideology generally is very, very much on the side of sort of forcing compliance to a large degree. Not always, by the way. I'm not trying to make a wide generalization, but in the Middle East, though, it's generally about forcing compliance, and you really can't do that with a democracy. So by that virtue, it's really not compatible with that form of governance. And I think it's why it has a really hard time functioning in the Middle East like a true democracy because there's too much intertwining of religion into it for it to function right.
Also, they just don't have the cultural framework for a democracy. I mean, like if you ask someone in the Middle East, would you support a democracy? I mean, most people wouldn't even know what the real framework for that would be. I mean, like, it's not like they're backwards or anything. They know what democracies are, but culturally they have absolutely no touch points with representative governance. That just has never existed in the region. I mean, up until recently, folks, this is what's really shocking to a lot of people. What's crazy is that if you're not talking about the Tigris or the Euphrates or the area of Israel, most of this area was never really governed by anybody up until about the last century in any unified way. It was a bunch of nomadic tribes that kind of controlled territory in theory, but not really. And they just kind of wandered around, and it was a very tribal form of government because it never got beyond the tribal level. So there would just be a singular leader that led the group, the tribe, and that was it. And then they basically evolved out of that into being the states that we see today out of like the last 70 years or so, really the past 80 years if we're being honest. But these governments still have a lot of that sort of tribal influence on them to where it was a small enough group that it could be led by a singular leader with basically absolute power. It'd still run like that in every single one of these states here in the Middle East. Very interesting stuff. But it would be a long rabbit hole to talk about why there are a large amount of democracies in Europe versus none basically in the Middle East except for Iraq, and theirs hardly even functions. But that's a story for another time. Maybe the question segment will talk about that. But anyways,
Wasn't Sacha Baron Cohen? Wasn't he a dictator in the Middle East at one point?
he was a dictator of the Great Huadim. But I don't even know.
You got. I think he was a good dictator actually. Isn't he the one that like he's the one that pioneered the whole thing about making the missiles pointy and stuff? So I think he was actually kind of decent.
Man, honestly, his improvements to missiles was very Aladdin. But he was actually supposed to be a parody of Muammar Gaddafi. That's like the whole thing that he was doing a parody of, because he had like the women bodyguards and everything. You remember that in the movie?
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, so he was supposed to be kind of like a spinoff of Gaddafi, pretty much from Libya. But anyways, with that, it is time for us, folks, to move on into our question segment for a brief moment. We've had a lot of people watching so far, and we thank y'all for that. We still have 14.7 thousand people here, and I want to get 3 questions from the chat before we move on to the rest of our major news that isn't in the Middle East and it's elsewhere around the world. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so let's jump into our first 3 super chat questions, and our first one goes to none other than Howard Mendelson, and Howard puts in a very generous $100 support, and thank you very much, Howard, for the support, and we do appreciate that very, very much. And he said, maybe the president shouldn't go on TV and announce victory before we do a battle damage assessment. And Howard, that I remember having that debate vividly. I remember that back when it happened during, I think it was June of last year when the strikes took place with Midnight Hammer. We were saying that maybe until we know for a fact that the Iranian nuclear sites have actually been thoroughly eliminated, before we go and start declaring victory on the TV, maybe we should probably wait. But clearly, there was no waiting to be had there. It was let's jump on TV immediately, let's declare victory, whether or not we know it for a fact or not, which it turns out that may have not been the smartest thing to do. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to say, a humongous thanks to you for support, Howard Mendelson. And I'd have to agree. One that was funny, and this is something we always have to deal with when covering the news. People don't understand that we don't really care if you like someone or not, or if you're a Republican or a Democrat. If something clearly did not turn out well, we're just going to say it. And I remember back then when that happened, we were like, well, we really don't know if that knocked out those facilities. And there was a flood of people in the chat telling us that we just clearly hated the president. There's no way that this could have failed because the president did it, and they love the president, so he can't ever be wrong. And we had to actually then kind of roll back saying that instead of just digging in and being like, nope, it didn't really work out too well. This should have been a multi-week long airstrike. And we had to go, well, maybe it worked, maybe it didn't, when we both knew that it hadn't worked at all. And that's the thing about having someone who has to have everything succeed, and it has to be the biggest and greatest thing. They don't even wait to get actual qualitative assessments to say whether something worked or not. They just say it worked, and then a year, well, really even a half year later, the president's now saying they need to stop developing nuclear weaponry. It's like, well, if your statements were true from 6 months ago, they can't even develop a nuclear weapon because you completely destroyed their abilities to do that. Absolutely, according to his words. Like, if you go back and listen to him back then in July, he said that Iranian nuclear weapons capabilities have been completely destroyed to the point that their nuclear program is over, and it will never be started again in the rest of human history. 6 months later, we're now telling them that they have to stop uranium enrichment, which clearly shows that those statements from back then were just absolutely false and nothing more than bravado. And then we tried to pistol whip basically all of the other countries in the Middle East and in Europe to believe, or at least just say publicly, that the Iranian nuclear facilities had been completely destroyed when they weren't. So I do thank you massively for support and helping this channel to keep on running, Howard Mendelson. And I'd have to agree with you. You got to wait for the damage assessments to come out before you go out and make an announcement that we've completely won. Because he also did the same thing on the Houthis as well. We conducted a couple of airstrikes on the Houthis for about a few weeks. And then afterwards we said the Houthis have been completely destroyed. They've unconditionally surrendered. We have won. And literally while we're saying that, they're having a giant rally in Sana'a. All of the Houthis are celebrating that the U.S. has backed off and we're running away, and that they didn't get defeated. I mean, al-Houthi is still alive, who's the leader of the Houthis. So it's like, It's like maybe we should actually qualitatively assess stuff and work with it that way. Because if you want to declare a victory, that's fine, but I think that you actually ought to take the actions that would lead to a victory instead of just doing something and then it ends up however and then just declaring victory nonetheless. So a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. We wouldn't be able to keep it running, and we wouldn't be able to keep the lights on and get some delicious Costco chicken. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again, and we're on to the next one.
All right, and our second one here goes to none other than Mark Ead. And thank you very much, Mark, for that $50 support and also helping to keep the channel running. And we do appreciate that. And Mark said, LSA New Zealand and transport delays now reporting Slava Ukraine, Hiram Slava, and take one from the chat fellows and LSA from New Zealand in the south.
And a big LSA to New Zealand in the south of New Zealand. And I got to thank you massively for the support, Mark Ead. And I've got to say, it's great to have you here tonight. And I also got to say that it's been one hell of a night again, that's for sure. That we can say, Mark Ead. And I've got to say that transport delays are unfortunate, but I hope that you've been able to make it home. And also, Slava Ukrainian, Slava. And we will make sure to take one from the chat in your honor. So, Matthew, what do we got?
And this one goes to IC, who said, what is the situation with the Iranian water crisis? Did they ever solve it?
No, the Iranian water crisis is still going on in the background of everything else right now. So that is still a humongous crisis that we are still seeing going on at this point. And so I hope that does address that the best I can, at least for the live chat. And a huge thanks to you once again for support, Mark Ead, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And I'd have to agree with what Matthew said in the chat. Putting TDS in the live chat will result in the ban. Like, if you think the president does everything right, you can go live in a psych ward in a padded room. Like, we've never said that about any president. We're not going to start today because you can't handle it. So anyways, with that, we are on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to be getting on into the rest of the news. So what do we got, Matthew?
And our last super chat of the segment goes to none other than Peter Burrow. And thank you very much, Peter, for that $50 support. And we do appreciate that very much. And also, by the way, that is Flash One right there. That's what we used to know him as. It changed his name as YouTube changed it. But thank you very much, Flash One, for that support. He said, hey there, Enforcers. I've been a bit busy as of late working at our summer bushfires. And it's great to watch the show at the end of the day with a few beers. And also a great show. An LSA and live chat question, please.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Flash One, an old guard and a channel legend. We know you because of the profile picture. We get very familiarized with people's profile pictures, which helps us out with designations later on. But a humongous thanks to you for watching. I hope you've been having fun down there in the summer of Australia, which is always so weird, Matthew, because everyone in the southern hemisphere right now is having their summer in the middle of like December. That is really weird.
We're having like a winter, but really not a winter. It's kind of like a little bit of a weird thing.
Yeah, it's historically here in Utah, this is the least amount of snowfall that's been seen in the entirety of the state's history that has been recorded so far, which is about 150 years of weather data. So a little bit unfortunate with that one. But one thing I will have to say, though, is that I hope y'all are enjoying y'all summer down there in Australia, and also really cool to hear that you're hanging out at bushfires and having a couple of beers. That sounds like a good time. And I got to thank you massively so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you have made this channel possible for years, so that way many can enjoy a couple of beers while watching the channel after enjoying a bushfire, which sounds so Australian, that is almost like quintessential Australian. But we will make sure to get a live chat in your honor. So Matthew, what do we got from the chat?
And this one goes to AF Kaplan, who said, why wasn't Pickaxe Mountain hit during the first round, and what's that about?
Apparently we just overlooked that. Either that was a humongous lapse in intelligence by the CIA, or it was a target that was known about and we just skipped it over for some reason. We actually do not know. But maybe they intentionally didn't hit it, so that way they'd have a reason to return back later if they needed to. That's also, I hate to say that, because of course that indicates a little element of, you know, not being totally upfront with the American people. But I begin to wonder if that is the case, because there's no way that they didn't know about that facility. Like, there's no way. If OSINT people know about it, the CIA, the professionals, have to know about it, because they monitor OSINT just like we monitor it. Plus they have more
more that we don't have in the public. So it makes you wonder if they intentionally did not hit it for some other purpose.
Yeah, and also it'd be really hard to miss it because if you ever even looked at it on a satellite picture, the first thing that everyone would go is, "Huh, what are these roads down here, and what are these giant piles of ballast out here or tailings out here at the side of these roads?" And then you would see the tunnels. So I mean, they had to have seen it. I think they skipped it over, to be entirely honest, like Matthew's saying, so that way we could come back later and have an excuse to bomb Iran a second time if we needed to. So I think that's generally the reason why we didn't hit it, because how in the hell could we bomb the actual Natanz facility, the campus, literally just northeast of this by about a half mile, and not hit the Pickaxe Mountain facility? And the reason is because we probably intentionally avoided hitting it, so that way we'd have a reason to come back later. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And a huge thanks to Flash One once again for supporting this channel, and also sponsoring that live chat. And now with that, folks, it's time for us to move on into something else that is very interesting. We're moving on over into East Asia, because a lot of weapons and weapons proving has been done today. Traffic between Russia and North Korea has apparently reduced due to bad weather over this month, which means that the Russians are receiving less arms in total because of that bad weather. We all know that North Korean ships are made of cardboard, and so if the winds get too strong and the waves get too tall, the ships might just cave in on themselves because the cardboard can only handle so much. Meanwhile, down in Taiwan, we also were able to hear, for big news for the Taiwanese, that the Taiwanese Navy has conducted the first successful dive tests of the Haikun, which is Taiwan's first indigenously constructed submarine, and it carried out shallow water submerged trials to a depth of 100 meters this morning. This marks the 8th in a series of sea trials which began in June of 2025 last year, and subsequent deep water testing will take the Haikun to operational depths of 300 to 400 meters, meaning that they're finally getting their first indigenously built submarine into the waters, and is getting incredibly close to actually commissioning it as an operational submarine of the Republic of China's Navy, which is incredibly cool to hear. But in China, in the actual People's Republic of China, we got some interesting looks today at a little experimental aircraft. The J-36.
Oh, they have their own version of a flying Dorito. Is this Cool Ranch or is this Nacho?
I think this is Cool Ranch, because that thing is cool as beans with the gear down, conducting its same slow speed test that we saw from the last time. And we also got some closer up pictures of it right here. Here they are. I have to say,
oh man, I think this is Nacho, because this is Nacho average plane right here, I'll tell you.
I'm not going to lie, man. This thing kind of looks like it's of shoddy construction.
Yeah, it kind of does. Also, by the way, they have changed up the flight services, by the way. It looks like they've changed up the edges of the wings from the last time we saw this thing. That's a difference. Also, by the way, it sure would be nice to have a picture of like the back of that engine configuration right there. Like, we really can't tell what we're looking at from this angle. It would be wild if we had someone on the ground who got a picture of that.
Yeah, it would be pretty wild, but, you know, we really didn't have much of anything. But near to the area where the Chengdu Aircraft Corporation is, someone did take a picture today actually showing us the incredibly bad air quality index that existed within the area to kind of give us an idea of the difficulty of flying an aircraft in these conditions. And if we look at this picture right here, I mean, the air quality around here, Matthew, is bad. I mean, that is so much smaller. What the hell is that? Yeah. What is that down there?
That looks like the engine configuration to me, and this looks like somebody standing somewhere where they probably shouldn't. But honestly, though, I think the smog is like national security defense for them. It's really working wonders for their OPSEC. You can kind of make out what you're looking at, but through the smog, though, that's pretty thick. That's pretty bad, actually. But it looks like it has 3 engines in the rear, if that is the same model of aircraft.
It is the same model of aircraft, and a wonderful Chinese citizen climbed over the fence to this airbase and was not caught, and was actually able to get onto the airbase and take this picture. Man, that would not happen in Area 51, I can tell you that right now. But this lets us see the rear view of this J-36 in this picture, which is the first rear view we've ever gotten of the J-36 at this point. So a huge congrats to that Chinese citizen for getting themselves a 20-year prison stint, and also getting us all a picture of the rear end of the J-36 here on air. And I mean, that's something. That's something. I also got to say, folks, that the pea soup air quality out here is also something else. This really makes Salt Lake City inversions look tame.
Yeah, I wonder if they have to like design that into the plane design, like like intaking the air. Like, do they design it around the smog or do they not?
I have a feeling they probably don't. I would have a feeling they probably just like consider that to be an uncontrollable variable, and they just assume that it'll be operating in a vacuum or something like that in clean air. But something else that's pretty funny though, Matthew. One thing that I find very hilarious here is that for the Chinese to talk about how good they are at policing their own people and basically making sure that they have no freedoms, this guy did have enough freedom to bust into this airbase and take a picture of this plane, which would have never happened in America.
Hmm. That's true. Also, by the way, you really wouldn't see the United States military testing new airframes like this the way the Chinese are doing it. The Chinese are treating it like it's like a beta update or something for software. Like they keep bringing this thing out and flying it as they're making literal design adjustments to it. Because, like I said, they've changed the control surfaces on the aircraft since the last time we saw it fly. So they're literally making on-the-fly adjustments to the design, test flying it in the public's view, and people are also able to photograph it, which is not something the United States does by any means. But this guy here, though, I got to say, what a champ for taking a picture of this. I was quickly trying to scroll through the guide real quick to see how many social credit score points this cost you. Apparently, this is a minus 1,000 for this, possibly.
Damn, you just get the whole thing wiped out. Like you start off at zero. You're basically a non-citizen. Also,
this cuts it straight in half.
Also, another thing, Matthew, like in China, I've heard that VFIR rules for commercial aviation just don't exist because of how thick the smog is, because there's no way to visually identify anything.
Yeah, that's true. That's they gotta have a whole different navigation method for this.
Man, you're just flying around in that movie, The Mist. You know, the one I'm talking about where the monsters are off in the mist. The whole of China, you're just literally living in the movie, The Mist. But there's no monsters, it's just smog. But anyways, moving us... Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, we do have to go over the CMC stuff again today. The Institute for the Study of War has put out their own analysis of the purges that have been going on so far. And here's what the Institute for the Study of War had to say about the arrests of Zhang Yuzhao and Liu Jinli. The CCP Secretary General Xi Jinping has expanded his military purges to include two of the most senior officers in the PLA. Xi may have purged them because he saw them as undermining his leadership and military objectives, and the continued purges have reduced the Central Military Commission since 2023 from 7 members to 2, including Xi, transforming the body into an extension of Xi's will rather than a major military decision-making forum. The CMC purges consolidate Xi's control over the military, but risk isolating him or surrounding him with sycophants, which in turn risks military miscalculations. So it appears that Xi Jinping is having some trust issues, and the only guy who's left is Zhang Zhengmin, who is the secretary of the CNC Commission for Discipline Inspection. So basically, the guy who would root out anyone who is against Xi is the only guy left in the Central Military Commission at this point, except for Xi.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. He chose literally the one guy that said literally there to protect Xi is the only guy remaining. That's kind of a little bit laughable with that right there. Also, by the way, this sounds almost identical to what's happening with Vladimir Putin, the way that he's literally surrounding himself with only yes men. And now, granted, Xi has a little bit of a different motivation. He's trying to make sure that these guys aren't going to turn on him because it sounds like these guys were starting to have a little issue because there's allegations that Xi was actually putting out nuclear information to the United States. That's the allegation. We're not really entirely sure if that's true, but it sounds like it could be. This is the same thing Putin's doing. Putin is totally isolated from anybody that's willing to speak up and say that he's doing something that may lead to something catastrophic with Russia. The same thing with Xi at this point. He's going to be leading himself down a very bad path if he only surrounds himself with yes men.
Man, I gotta say though, the rest of Miao Hua must have been a very interesting one back in October of last year. They said, "How do you plea?" Meow. They said, "Not guilty." Man, like, bro, it's like,
man, you gotta admit though, Zhang was eating well. Like, Zhang looks like he was eating good. Like, out of all the guys here, I will say the other guys look like they're pretty fit. Like, they don't look like they're overweight or anything. Zhang Yuzhao, he was he was eating up.
Man, Zhang Yuzhao, man, they used to call him the Bao Xi, in the Chinese military. He was little Bao, you know what I mean?
Man, I tell you what, that dim sum didn't stand a chance.
Bruh, dude, I'm telling you, man. Bruh, he was what he ate. He was a Baoji dumpling. Like, bruh, he was wandering around. He was, when he got on those ships, I heard that they actually settle a little bit lower in the water. But anyways, beyond, it's really interesting, folks, how the Secretary of Defense had to have that whole rigmarole speech, or we got every general in the world to come to Quantico so that way you could bitch about fatties in the military. Meanwhile, in China and in Russia, there's nothing but fatties that run the military. Like, I find that a little bit kind of funny. It's like, so generals in America have to meet physical fitness standards, but the people that we say have militaries that are far more competent than ours, at least in personnel, have nothing but fatties running the military. It's like, does that really work? You know, like when you really look at that beyond the surface, because the whole thing with what the Secretary of Defense was saying last year was that China and Russia doesn't have fatties running their military. Well, I mean, if you look at it, I mean, Zhang is a fatty. I mean, there's really no question about that. That guy is a little bit of a dumpling here. So it's like, how in the world can we say that we need to get to the level of China and Russia when we were already exceeding the level of China and Russia in our leadership? Because none of our generals were like, you know, meal team 6. I mean, it wasn't like they were just absolutely morbidly obese. I mean, they were overweight, some of them were, sure, but it's like, that's nothing, you know, incredibly bad. I mean, a lot of these guys were like in their 50s. You know, you can only keep physically fit for so long, you know, in a normal adult male life, or an adult female for that matter. You know, you can't be perfectly fit and lean up until you're 80. I mean, it's just not possible.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Also, by the way, I see someone in the chat saying, "Guys, you don't understand communism. It's yes men, or they get basically let go of in the government." That's actually not true. Like even in a communist government like China, the military leadership will make suggestions based on their own expertise. Now, granted, the dictator, which is Xi, he gets the final say, but it's presumed that all the experts in their appropriate fields, the Joint Chief, also the Defense Secretary as well, they all make their own suggestions, because even in these systems, even the dictator realizes they need decent advice. But the problem is, though, if you start chilling that advice by firing people and also investigating and prosecuting your top people, then whoever you get in after that's going to be scared to death to say anything that they think might upset the leader, which is going to lead you down a bad path, like it has Vladimir Putin miscalculating pretty much everything in the Ukraine war.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at any historical example, a lot of communist countries will have people in the military. I mean, if anything's guaranteed, the political apparatus is filled with nothing but yes men. The entire Chinese Communist Party's Congress is nothing but yes men to Xi. That's how the political apparatus in these sorts of communist or socialist countries work. But if you look at the military, they actually have to be filled with competent people that are not yes men. Otherwise, disastrous consequences result. Like, for example, Joseph Stalin after the Great Purge, right before World War II, that led to the massive failures during the Finnish Winter War and the Second World War, as well as the Continuation War. And then if you look at, say, any other leadership from then on, usually they had competent leadership in the Soviet Union to some extent. They wouldn't have people that just said yes to everything that Khrushchev or Brezhnev or anyone else would say, because all of those leaders knew they have to have some sort of actual militarily competent individuals advising them. Otherwise, their visions might not really coalesce into reality because they might not be grounded in reality. So what Xi is doing is he's basically weakening the PLA to the point it's going to be a sham show when it actually tries to invade Taiwan, because there's going to be absolutely nobody telling him a competent overview of what's going to be happening or what they should be doing to respond to something that'll happen.
Exactly right.
And so, we will be moving on from that announcement from the Institute of Study of War, a great organization filled with a lot of very intelligent people. And moving on, and I say that, folks, because we have a very amicable relationship with the Institute for the Study of War. And to be entirely honest with y'all, not to plug them, but they do give the best, most factual and unbiased analysis of foreign policy and war developments that I've seen out there on the internet. It truly does deserve the name, the Institute for the Study of War. It's a very smart group of folks. But moving on from that and on over into the Americas, we have also been able to get other developments here. First off, we have been able to hear that the Panamanians have made a humongous move today. The Panamanian Supreme Court has just ousted the Hong Kong port operators, which was the Hutchison Group, from the port of Panama City and also the port of Cordoba, which was right up here near the port of Cologne. They have been ousted from both of them, and now Maersk, or as it used to be called, Maersk Sealand, will be the company operating the ports after C.K. Hutchison was literally kicked out today by the Panamanian Supreme Court. So, the Chinese are out of Panama. Yeah! Yippee! That's great. That's great news, folks. I cannot tell you how good that is. And, you know, it's so funny, folks, everything that led up to this, because back in the day, China was saying C.K. Hutchison is not a Chinese company because C.K. Hutchison is operated out of Hong Kong. which is a special autonomous region of the People's Republic of China. But what's funny about that, though, is that while through the entire time the Chinese insisted that C.K. Hutchison was not a direct extension of China's economic or political will within the Republic of Panama, the Chinese did make an official statement today saying that they were not happy about it and they will take necessary measures to protect Chinese companies in Panama after the ruling. And according to what we have known as the technical ruling, Panama Supreme Court has ruled that license terms allowing the Hong Kong-based company C.K. Hutchison to operate two major ports at either end of the Panama Canal violate the country's constitution, a decision that could reshape one of the world's most strategic waterways. So while the Chinese are saying that C.K. Hutchison isn't a Chinese company, they're saying that they will avenge C.K. Hutchison and Chinese interest in Panama now that they've been kicked out. It's the same sort of trick they did with TikTok. Mr. Senator, I'm Singaporean. And then that ended up not really turning out too well either, did it? Now it's being run by another country. Oh, I wonder who in the world that could be. But anyways, a lot of people...
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Oh, man, and you know it. Like, man.
Oh, man, I'll tell you what, the pain, the agony.
Man, we need to get this foreign influence out of social media. So let's hand it to another foreign country. Oh, man.
America's for sale. What can we say? It's like a big ass for sale sign in the yard. It's like a yard sale, but it's influence.
Oh, man, the sickest joke of the century. let's rid the country of foreign influence. So let's take the Chinese-run social media company and then hand it over to Israel, because that clearly speaks American more than anything else. Instead of having it run by an actual American firm. But anyways, beyond that, though, we have been able to hear that a lot of people are putting in their opinions about what the Chinese might do to Panama or to the United States because of the Panamanian Supreme Court ruling today. And Matthew, what are people saying, and what are you thinking?
Okay, so now that China has effectively been kicked out of the Panama Canal, China is vowing retaliation, and it really was an incident. It sounds like the Panamanian government, or specifically their court system, said, you know what, that whole little contract y'all got to show up and operate the canal, we don't like it, get out of here. That was as simple as it was, and now the Chinese are like, whoa, they're like, what are you talking about? Like, you can't just do that. It's caught them off guard, clearly. So what now happens? 44% said China won't do a damn thing, while 42% said China will do some economic damage, while 10% said China's Navy will show up. And I don't think their Navy is going to show up. I really don't think that. I think their Navy will probably stay away from the canal because I think the U.S. might not be too happy about the Chinese Navy showing up to the area where the Donroe Doctrine is in full effect. So I would say they're probably not showing up. But China is going to try to do some economic damage. They are naturally going to resort to these nasty tactics. For example, maybe not buying some more soybeans or something like that. They will do something to try to hurt the United States, because ultimately they're not going to take their anger out on Panama. They're going to take it out on Panama's puppet masters, which is the United States. So I'm with the 41%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say I'm with the 41%. That's really all that they can do. This is probably a big thing to them because controlling the Panama Canal would have been, or really controlling the Republic of Panama would have been hugely beneficial in an outbreak of war through the economic control that they would have. So with them getting kicked out today, they're probably going to try and leverage some form of economic consequence against Panama, say sanctions or maybe even a trade embargo. And they might also try and do that against the United States as well. But we'll have to wait and see. It's either going to be that or it's going to be nothing but a strongly worded diplomatic statement. They have no way to sell the Chinese Navy out this far to Panama. They haven't, they finally just made it, folks, to where the Chinese Navy could sail kind of around the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. They're sure as hell not crossing the Pacific right now to make it to Panama. They're not ready for that. They aren't ready. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that little Panamanian news well. And also, we were able to hear that Delcy Rodriguez has announced, who is now the brand new leader of Venezuela, that general amnesty has been declared for all political prisoners in the country. So we'll be waiting to see if those 500 other people are arrested and if the collectivos just beat them once they get outside of prison. We're not really sure. But moving on out of Venezuela, it's now time for us to get to Washington, because there's been a couple of developments that have come out of Washington. First off, primarily, we have to talk about the... redacted. Sorry, everyone. I love the United States of America. I love the United States of America. I love the president. I love to see it. But anyways, moving on from that, we have been able to hear that the president has claimed that the Iranians want to make a deal. Everyone always wants to make a deal, don't they? I mean, I think, though, I heard, folks, that when the president was born, his mother said, "Oh, look at him," and he went, "Yeah. yeah, Google, make a deal. And everyone's like, oh, look at him. That's his first words. And he's been saying that ever since. I don't know if the Iranians want to make a deal. It sounds like Argachi made it fairly clear they don't want to. So we'll have to see how that goes. We also were able to hear, additionally, that apparently, according to some unnamed Western analyst, they state that the U.S. attempt to kill Iran's supreme leader is more likely than capture, and less risky if done with standoff weaponry. That was according to The Guardian. Now, I don't know if The Guardian is listening to our show. I don't know if we're considered a Western analyst or not, but we said that exactly word for word last night on air. So it appears that someone is agreeing with us, or we're quoting ourselves, cited by someone else that left us unnamed, and then we're agreeing with ourselves. We're not really sure which one that is. We also were able to hear that there has been a declaration on Cuba. On Thursday, the president signed an executive order declaring a national emergency related to the threat posed by Cuba towards the United States, citing their support for China, Russia, Iran, Hamas, and Hezbollah. Under the order, the Secretary of State, along with the Secretary of State, Emperor Bolivar of Venezuela, leader of Iran, the owner of the Hilton hotels, so on and so forth, and the Secretary of Commerce are directed to impose an additional ad valorem. I unfortunately cannot read Latin.
Ad valorem.
Ad valorem rate of duty. Thank you so much for helping me out with that, Matthew. What's benevolent me on goods imported into the United States that are products by any other country that directly or indirectly sells or otherwise provides any oil to Cuba. So it appears that we're ramping up the pressure on the Cubans. And a lot of people are wondering, why? Why would we be ramping up pressure on the Cubans? Aren't they broke? Aren't they broke ass poor? They really can't even do anything. But a lot of people are wondering, why are we doing it? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so U.S. officials have today declared a national emergency over Little St. James, over Cuba, citing the China and Russia threat and what's happening. So 45% said the USA simply wants to take it, while 26% said it seems like mere political gesturing, and 22% said Cuba must be escalating something, either militarily or economically, against the United States. And I would say personally that I think the U.S. wants to do a similar thing that they did to Venezuela with Cuba, but I think it might go a little bit further than that. Cuba being so close to Florida, and this is going to sound a little bit juvenile, but I think this is the logic behind it. I think they want to take Cuba because it's so close to Florida, and also it's something that's always been a point of contention for the Russians and the Chinese, etc. For example, the missile crisis that happened. I think the current admin wants to actually take that territory. So I'm going to be with the 44%. I think their ultimate goal is to collapse the regime and then use that as a pretext to come in and take the place over, which I'll be honest with you, folks. This is going to be controversial. I wouldn't be necessarily against that, to be perfectly honest. Cuba has always been a critical threat against the United States. It always really has been. At the same time, though, the risk behind that, because there is still a risk to it, even if it's something that we would be in favor of, it does embolden countries like China that want to do something similar, like, for example, with Taiwan. It emboldens them to do the exact same thing with those islands. So you got to be careful about that. It's destabilizing the global order and also giving other countries permission to go take other territories, which isn't good. So if you weigh the risk, it's a little bit tricky. But Enforcer, what say you?
Matthew, I'm going to have to be entirely honest with you. What all of these elites are doing down here on this island is absolutely irreprehensible. The kind of effects that they're having on the innocents, the fact that they keep it secret due to their power, it's absolutely unacceptable, and it's also a major threat to the United States of America. Now, I do know that some people are going to be asking, what island are you talking about? Oh, I mean, Cuba. Absolutely. I mean, there's no other island in question down here, obviously. I mean, who in the hell would ever say otherwise? Anyways, I would say that the Cubans are a pretty big strategic issue for the United States, have been for decades, but the fact that they have basically no economy and really no military, at least as a standalone country, they really don't pose a strategic threat to the United States. They're more of a nuisance than anything. But the reality of the facts is that the Cubans are aligned with the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China, and the Chinese have set up listening posts west of Havana inside of Cuba recently. And for that reason alone, I would say that military action against Cuba could be justifiable for U.S. security interests. But I would say that a lot like the Venezuelan situation, I believe that there are larger fish to fry at the moment, and I really don't know why we would want to tie up military operations in the Caribbean even further still than we already have, considering that there's far larger things going on in the world, like a potential for a war with Russia and Europe, the inevitability of a war with Iran. And also, on top of that, the eventual growing threat of the Chinese attempting an invasion of Taiwan. So, while I would say you could definitely make a strategic argument for dealing with the Cuban government, or generally dealing with the communist Cubans, it doesn't really reach on the radar, in my opinion, to the precedent of importance to where we have to deal with that this year right now. I just don't really see that. But anyways,
If the U.S. is going to take something, though, I mean, if they're going to take something, and the U.S. admin just can't get that imperial ambitions itch out of their system, out of all the places they could take, for example, taking Diego Garcia, that situation's moot now because the Britain backed off of that whole stupid plan to give it back to Mauritius. They backed off of that. So if you're going to take something, Cuba would probably be the most logical to take if you're going to take something. Taking Greenland is pure stupidity, to say the least. But Cuba, you could at least make an argument for Cuba. It probably would still not be wise to do it because you're giving other countries like China permission to move forward with invading Taiwan and things like that, and also giving Russia permission to start taking Baltic states basically too. But at least you would have an argument to rid Cuba of the spy bases and things like that, and also rid of the missile threat that it poses to the United States as well if they wanted to station missiles there.
yeah, I'd have to agree. I'm not really seeing it. To be entirely honest with the whole Cuban situation. Like, I see the strategic pertinence of something like that, but once again, a lot like Venezuela, you could deal with that like 8 years from now, and the situation would be very same to what it is at the moment. Because it's like, what has Cuba been since the collapse of the Soviet Union? An impoverished hell. What is it today? It is still an impoverished hell. What is it going to be 8 years from now? An impoverished hell. And I'll tell you why. No matter what, nobody can come here and develop this island into something that's going to be worthwhile. There is basically no natural resources on this island but the soil, and that's why if you ever look at their major products in Cuba historically, it was only sugar and tobacco. Because that's really all that Cuba can actually produce. There's really no other room or any availability to produce any other meaningful resource. So unless if the Chinese wanted to pour hundreds of billions of dollars into Cuba over the course of the decade or so, and try and get them into, say, manufacturing some sort of advanced computer components, where they can just import materials and then create a finished product and then ship that out, there's really no way for Cuba to actually develop a mature economy that would then start to make Cuba an actual threat to the United States of America and a bastion of Chinese or Russian influence in the region, because they're always going to be so economically weak, they could easily be toppled by a strong wind.
I think the cigars are the key to success for Cuba. If someone would simply go into the place and let the U.S. lift those sanctions, I think the cigars could single-handedly lift Cuba out of poverty. I think it could.
You know what, Matthew? I just thought of it. Golf courses and casinos everywhere.
I think they already have casinos. I don't think the casinos work. What is the casino like? Have they shut down? Because like Cuba, especially in Havana, that used to be known for like having casinos all over the place. Or is that still a thing?
Oh yeah, that was during the times of Bautista, who was the dictator who was in charge of Cuba before Fidel Castro took over. And I think that some of them still exist. I think. Let me look around.
We got a street view of this place, by the way.
Oh hell no. Hardly.
Oh, damn. We got any view of the ground. I'm
Wait a minute.
I'm just trying to see what Havana's looking like these days.
They have a John Lennon Park? What?
Imagine all the people.
Imagine all, and so this is Christmas. Man, I'm
that looks like somebody else. I can't really really ID the face, but that looks like resembling somebody else.
And some people are probably
Steve Jobs.
Some people are. Maybe. Some people are asking though. I see in the chat, why in the world do they have a John Lennon Park? Is it because of his support of socialism or communism? No, it's because he could put one down. But I'm just kidding. But beyond that, I like how people were posing in front of the ruins. This looks like a war zone.
Yeah, really. Yeah, this is probably like a good part of town right here. But look at this. Oh my goodness gracious. This poor thing right here. Honestly, wait a minute. Someone brought up a good point. let's see. It was IC. IC said Cuba could develop a tourism industry if the USA took over. They could that could be like realistically that could be a way to actually revive their economy at least in the short term. With tourism, letting people come visit the place. Obviously, they need some investment. I think that's clear as a bell. They definitely need some investment. This place is in deep trouble. The environment, the location, the coast, they've got potential. It just needs a little bit of help.
Man, bruh, this is what the average person living in Cuba probably looks like right now with the emaciated horse and the starving man.
Damn.
Bruh.
What's up with his chin?
Oh, that's a beard, I think.
Oh, I was about to say, that beard's like a lethal weapon.
He said, onwards to impale them with my beard. Yeah, man, it's like you.
Can you imagine if that guy went to battle shaking his head? That guy would be lethal.
Man, don't even go there, man. That would be a war crime eventually. I gotta say though, John Lennon Park's kind of looking a little beat down.
Yeah, imagine all the ruins, living life in despair.
Man, Yoko Ono must have passed through this area at some point and started that screeching, ran everyone out of the city. But anyways, beyond that though, I gotta say, folks, that is I don't really think the casinos are here anymore, Matthew. I think they may have actually collapsed into ruins with how that neighborhood is looking.
What's their GDP again? Like, do we know that off the bat? What the Cuban GDP? Let me see. Cuba GDP.
No, it's not 126 billion. That's BS. Hell
so
no.
They're saying it reached 107 billion USD in 2020, and the GDP per capita is about 7,400. So that seems rather high for Cuba. I'm not really sure how it's reaching that much. I was expecting like something less than that. Isn't it wild though that if you take like for example the richest billionaire, I think his net worth is like 700 billion now. He's like 7 Cubas.
Man, that is something actually kind of crazy. I would have to say I don't believe that though, because Ukraine had a GDP before the war in Ukraine of like $240 billion, and they look way better off than the Cubans do in every city. So there's no way that that's the right GDP figure.
Yeah, I feel like they're cooking books or doing something. There's something not adding up with that. But you got to admit though, like Cuba does have potential. Now, granted, we want them to do it. Like it'd be great for the Cuban people to do it, but it has potential. Also, by the way, I don't like the idea of Chinese spy bases being right here on Cuba. I don't like that either. But I just don't know. Like the U.S. going to actually take the thing, I don't know. It seems to me like this Donroe Doctrine, which is like the new, like modified version of the Monroe Doctrine, is a lot more aggressive than anything the Monroe Doctrine was ever intended to be.
Yeah, I'd say so. I'll be honest with you though, this would take a lot of money to rebuild this place and make it anything worth
I think
going to.
you could slap some paint on it. You know how landlords between like renters they just like slap a new coat of paint on it. Even for the light like switches and stuff, they just slather paint, like just slather that paint. Do that on this, you'd have the place fixed up.
I mean, the beaches do look pretty nice. I will give it that. Although they kind of do look like they've been kind of abandoned for a hot minute, maybe a couple of decades. But you could do something with this. I have a feeling that loads and loads of golf courses, maybe even crypto mines, would really belong well in Cuba. Maybe we could build a couple of data centers here and suck all of that clear water off of the beaches and right into a data center, so that way people can pump out shitty AI-made videos. I think, I think there is a future to be had here in Cuba. You know what, Mandy? Why don't we ask the Spanish to get involved and come back and reform La Española? How about that?
I don't know about that. I don't know about that La Española, but here's my take. I don't necessarily have a problem with like taking Cuba, for example, because Cuba's obviously a failed state. Like it's clear that everybody's living in pure despair inside of Cuba, and there's no hope on the horizon, which isn't good. Not that we have a right to invade, but it is a security threat. It's always been one. I mean, the U.S. has wanted to take Cuba for a long time, like we have, but nobody's really gone for it because, Russia and China do use that as a spot to surveil. But at the same time, though, do we really want to start doing that? Because that is going to basically cordon off sections of the world. Like, for example, if China takes Taiwan, it's gonna further divide the world because we don't want to encourage things like that because it destabilizes everything. So is it worth it to destabilize the whole world? Probably not. It would be nice to have Cuba, but generally that's why the U.S. hasn't gone for it before, is to avoid that dilemma.
Yeah, I'd have to say I'd agree. But you know what they say, playa larga. Oh, wait a minute. Is that the Bay of Pigs? Oh, we better not touch on that one. But anyways, moving on from that, it is time for us folks to get on out of the Americas and on into Europa, because we do have Ukraine war news that we do have to cover today, folks, and it's pretty big stuff. Oh, it's big. It's juicy. It's time for us to get on into Moscow. Today, folks, we have to lay to rest another Russian company. Lukoil has now officially liquidated every single one of its foreign holdings. From what we've heard, Lukoil has announced the sale of Lukoil International GmbH, which holds its overseas assets, to the United States investment fund, the Carlyle Group. Lukoil had the most extensive foreign business empire among any Russian company in the Russian Federation. Its sales represents the largest setback for Russian international business ambitions since the war, highlighting the rising costs for companies 4 years after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Lukoil's foreign assets are valued at $22 billion, which honestly isn't even that much. If approved, Carlyle Group would acquire refineries in Romania and Bulgaria, a network of gas stations in the US and Europe, and oil and gas fields in the Middle East, Central Asia, and Africa. In 2023, Lukoil sold the ISAB refinery in Italy to Cyprus-based GOI Energy for $1.5 billion. This is showing us that Lukoil, which had already been rumored to almost be going into bankruptcy a couple of months ago, it was on the very near verge of bankruptcy and had to finalize this deal to sell their overseas assets to be able to restructure their company and get enough capital to be able to keep the Russian part, the actual parent company, Lukoil in Russia, running and operational. It's also showing us that the Russian economy at this point is truly spent. Companies are literally cannibalizing themselves to be able to try and get enough money to keep the company running on paper and to keep some minimum amount of activity going at the corporate level. But outside of that, most companies in Russia, a lot like Lukoil, are literally eating themselves alive to try and keep their companies existent for even just a little bit longer. So not really sounding too good for the Russian Federation. And what also isn't sounding good is that the Russians are having an absolute meltdown over the proposed ceasefire that Putin agreed to not hit Kyiv for a week. This has apparently gotten a lot of people in Russia very angry, because this is what they've been saying. Putin agreed not to fire for a week. At my personal, what results can we talk about if we don't defeat the enemy by playing to the public? What do we want to look good for the Americans? Or will the Ukrainians appreciate it? It seems like no one is taking care of the residents of our Kherson region on the other side. And everyone went, oh my God, 100, 100, 100. And then another one said, this is another stab in the back. And the information war, we're as always playing catch up. It's just some kind of a setback. Damn it. Hello? Maybe we should buy some generators for Ukraine. If we're going to do it, let's do it properly. So the Russians are pretty angry about this whole statement. We don't even know if it's true, actually.
Yeah, we don't even know if it's true. If it is true, though, I mean, I think the president of the United States is saying that Putin vowed he was going to abide by it. So we'll have to wait and see if that turns out to be the case, because Putin's promised a lot of stuff, and it turns out it never really comes to fruition. And then later on down the road, you'll hear like a backtracking, like, well, he didn't really say he was going to do that. He really said he was going to do this, and there's like a whole backtracking going on. But possibly so, maybe. I mean, the Russians are hurting. Like if you look at Belgorod, they're literally freezing. The citizens they're freezing to death. But that assumes that Putin cares enough about the citizens to actually abide by a ceasefire like this. He might be so bloodthirsty that he doesn't give a damn, and he'll still attack the energy infrastructure inside of Ukraine to hurt the civilians.
Man, it's tough stuff for the Russian people, man. I tell you, they just are losing every day. Also, they're even losing in Moscow now because public transport is breaking down. This is the line to get in on a bus, a single bus, because Russian public transport in Moscow is apparently running on significantly reduced schedules now due to the lack of fuel. And so for that reason, lines for the buses are now getting into the hundreds for a singular bus. That's rough.
Oh, man.
Good God. Man, if these guys if these guys are out here, man, for anything other than waiting for the bus, the Russian riot police would be out here beating them and arresting them because it would be called an unlawful assembly. But if you're in the hundreds waiting for a bus, that is fine.
Привет, спасибо, это más.
Извини, Liquidated the bus, especially. But anyways, moving on from that, and on down into the greater area south of Moscow, there was another Iranian flight into Moscow today. There also was one to Ankara, in Turkey as well for some form of talks. We don't really know what they're going to be talking about, but the Iranian A321 did fly to Moscow, so we'll be waiting to see what's going on with that. But moving on out of that little bit of news inside of Russia, it's now time for us to get on into the news from the war in Ukraine. But before I get on into that, though, and before I show you the pipes bursting in Belgrade, a lot of people are wondering, will the energy ceasefire that's alleged to have been agreed to by Putin, will that be followed through on, or will it not be? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? What are you thinking about that as well?
So they say there's an energy ceasefire. That's what they're telling me. They said that, sir, I'll agree to it this time. I'll abide by it. That's what he told me. So what's going to happen? It looks like 75% said Russia will not abide by the ceasefire. That's the overwhelming majority right there, said he won't. While 10% said Russia will adhere to it this time. And 11% says a 50-50 chance. So if you believe that Russia is going to adhere to this, here's what that really looks like. For an entire week, that's the entire 7 days, Russia will cease all energy strikes on Ukraine, all of them. I don't buy that for a second. It's possible, but I don't really buy that because at no point during the war has Russia ever done that. In fact, the one thing they've been hitting left and right intentionally over the last month or longer than that is the energy sites. So I'm not sure why they would want to stop now. There's really no reason for them to stop, and Putin really doesn't care about Ukraine reciprocating by attacking Belgorod and freezing his own citizens because he doesn't give a damn about the people. So I don't think Russia's going to adhere to it. That's my guess. But Enforcer, what say you?
I don't think they're going to adhere to it at all. I would have to be with 75% as well. I don't think they're going to adhere to it. And I'll show y'all something why in the Dnipro area here in a little bit. But while that's going on, the people in Belgrade are still freezing, and their pipes are bursting. That's a jet of water coming out of a burst pipe.
Plumber. Call the plumber. They might need to lay some new pipe.
Oh, pipe leak.
It looks like it's broken.
Oh, here's another clue.
Oh, oh no. Oh, yikes.
You know how much rust there was around that area where the pipe burst? I wouldn't have ever trusted drinking that water from the tap, just to be up front.
Yeah, you might get tapped if you drink that water.
Oh, man.
Hey, honey, I drank the water out the pipe and I contracted tap.
Oh my god, it's flooding the first floor.
Oh, this is going to be icicles galore. Oh, wow, it's making a bubble sound, too.
Oh my god. Well, it's tough to be a Russian these days. That I can't tell you. They're not really hashtag winning. They're more like hashtag losing. Also, while that's going on, and while the Russians have said they won't strike energy infrastructure for a week, they apparently just moved on, at least for now, to something else that I'd say is even worse, which is just directly attacking civilian railways and directly killing people in railway carriages. Here's a clip out of Dnipro showing a railway car that was directly hit by a Russian drone overnight, and set alight as a result. I mean, that's pretty sick when they say we're not going to hit energy infrastructure, so they start bombing rail cars filled with people.
Yeah, that's bad right there. Also, Blue Goblin said, I'm not sure if I'd be laughing at someone's misfortune like this. Listen, I actually experienced this in real life. Like, we actually experienced a flood quite like that in our own place at one point. I was laughing like a maniac all the way through it in my own place. So, you know, I don't mind. I feel like the Russians ought to develop a sense of humor. At least if your place is going to flood, at least laugh it off. You can walk it off.
Also, by the way, I mean, you know, on top of that, like speaking about the war, I mean, I'm not really going to cry for the Russians going, oh, boo-hoo-hoo. If you had seen what we'd seen over 4 years, you wouldn't really be crying for them all too much, especially with how a lot of them think back on the home front, how they think on the front lines, what they do to people on the front lines, what the Russian government does to other people, how they inform on each other. You wouldn't really have too much of sympathy. Like, there would be a little bit of sympathy. It wouldn't be completely gone, but also, you know, I wouldn't be sitting there going, oh, what a tragedy. Oh, that poor Russian soldier. His time was called. Oh, that's terrible. I mean, you know, if you had seen what he was doing to those women behind the lines, you wouldn't really be saying that too much. But anyways, I mean, that's what they do. I mean, I'm not even going to hold back on that one. I mean, if you actually saw what they did in occupied territory whenever those clips come out, or what they do to prisoners, you wouldn't really be crying too much over their misfortune. Also, by the way, I forgot to mention, this clip is also showing Ukrainians that had to throw themselves under stationary railway cars and hide because of the Russian attacks on that railway station that we just saw a moment ago in the aftermath of.
Алло. Привет. Четвертый прилет, блядь. Тихо. Все по станции, блядь. Первый возле нас, второй в электровоз, в обменный парк, третьего там где-то в Южном парке и обратно где-то там возле, даже возле цеха где-то там, блядь. Ну, депо, короче.
Pretty unfortunate stuff to see that the Russians moved on from attacking energy infrastructure to just now attacking the civilians outright. Shows really how sick their government is. Moving on from that and on to our location unknowns, we also were able to see a Ukrainian robot medically evacuating another wounded Ukrainian robot. That's pretty wild.
Now, isn't that something, right? They even brought a water bottle for it to keep it hydrated. That is literally like a garden wagon, like that top one right there. It's literally a garden wagon they've converted into a actual wartime drone. That's incredible.
That's pretty cool, honestly. Like, the ingenuity is pretty neat there. We also were able to see a Russian drone apparently equipped with Starlink today. That's apparently a little Starlink connector or Starlink antenna. We've heard that apparently that's being fixed at the moment, according to some people who work with Starlink, but we'll be waiting to see if that actually ends up panning out. Meanwhile, we've also been able to see that apparently the Russians are running out of donkeys. Now they transport stuff as a donkey. The ones who used to employ the asses are now the ass.
Oh, no. Oh, call you donkey, you idiot sandwich.
You're cooking in a burnt pan! Like, man.
Where's the lamb sauce?
Where's the lamb sauce? But also, we got the Russian casualty report for the day. Take a look, everyone.
Oh, they got one Bobcat skid steer, the type that skids to steer. You got to appreciate that. Those type, you got to love those Bobcats. I'm telling you, they're rolling in the scene. But tell us more.
And we were able to hear from Mr. Issa keeping the records that troop losses are up and UAV losses are down. There is an error. Submarines have been +2 since December 16th, and the MLRS is +2, according to this source from the Ukrainian MOD. And with that calculation in mind, let us get through the casualty report. 1,310 Russian soldiers have been wounded or they've met their maker over the past 24 hours, along with 4 APCs, 129 supply trucks, 1 main battle tank, 15 artillery pieces, 555 drones, 2 MLRSs, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, and 1 Bobcat skid steer. All in all, today has been a pretty good day, all things considered, and it does appear that the Ukrainian armed forces are making the Russians pay quite dearly for the ground they hold and the little ground that they take. Every step you take. But moving on from that and up into Kupiansk, we were able to confirm that apparently the 153rd Brigade, or tank regiment, of the Russian Federation has largely been destroyed, and the Ukrainians celebrated this today by taking the flag of the 153rd Tank Brigade, or tank regiment, and setting it on fire with lighter fluid. And a match, of course. Here it comes.
They poured that water on it.
Oh, they didn't just pour water on it, comrade. You're about to see what they really poured on it. Pour it on, boys! Whoosh!
Oh, my. It's a fire. Oh, wow. Look at that. We got a little middle finger salute.
Yes. And after that, we also get to see the 21st Regiment hunting down some Russian forces and making sure to take care of business up here. Oh,
this is a Kraken unit because, they get Kraken.
Man, they about to crack a Russian, I'd say.
That's what you do with pistachios, you get Kraken.
Ooh, and they got that Buhanka toasty. Oh, look, it's a Russian soldier. And another one. La la la. He's just running all whimsically. These guys even aren't running. This guy is kind of like sidestepping. These guys
I
are
feel
kind
like
of
the
spooked.
Ukrainians are going to offer the Russians some pistachios before long. You're gonna love my, you're gonna love my nuts.
Listen here, I have this brand new Ukrainian drone. We call it the slap chop. One slap, you get ground beef. Two slaps, you get chopped mince. Yeah, look at this. Look at these Russian nuts. Bam! Look at these chopped up nuts. You're gonna love my nuts. But anyways, moving on from that, on down the line, we also were able to see near to the Spotova area a rare sign of Russian kindness. A Russian actually was helping his wounded friend to evacuate from the front. This is exceptionally rare, and this was worthy of showing. You see that he's actually carrying him piggyback to try and get him on out of the area. Usually, Russians just leave the other Russians to die if they ever get wounded. They never help them out. So this was actually fairly exceptionally rare. Like, this was extremely rare, as a matter of fact. Here we can see a rare sign of compassion from the Russian soldiers. Most Russians generally are incompassionate creatures, but in this video we can see that at least one of them does have a conscience. But that's the end of that clip. Just generally showing y'all something of an enigma, to be entirely honest. And moving on down into the Severonsky Forest, we also get to see Russian artillery, including this BM-21 Grad, getting its time in the shine, I guess you could say.
Also, by the way, Bud in the live chat said, Enforcer, it looks like Enforcer Matt somehow predicted silver's plummeting value yesterday by accident. I did. That was a strange prediction there. It was a strange prediction. It seemed to be a little accurate right there.
I thought I was the one who said that.
Are you sure?
I think I was the one who said like silver and gold was taking a plummet. You're like, oh no, they're not. They're actually going up. And I was like, really?
Oh, they were going up as of yesterday. Yeah, that's true. They were.
But today, they've gone down.
Today, they went down hard today, or at least not gold really, but gold did a little bit, but silver really went down.
Oh, silver's going back down, folks. As silver's going, it's interesting. Once the dollar starts to get devalued, all of these other things that people invest in to secure their finances, they're also plummeting, basically forcing people to go and put their faith back in the dollar. Isn't that kind of a little interesting? I feel like there might be something going on there. But anyways, moving on from that into Seversk, we did get to see the Ukrainians also hitting the Russian forces out here as a part of the 81st Air Mobile Brigade. Ooh, that little UAZ got cooked. Ooh, and it be cooking like a fine barbecue. And that's the end of that clip. And moving on down from the Seversk area and on into Svatove and on into Dobropili. You know, actually, folks, with that sort of a prediction, maybe I should start getting into financial predictions. Maybe I ought to go onto some sort of a finance show and start talking about money. Like, I think you kind of get the person I'm trying to reference here, Matthew, without saying his name. You know who? Oh, well, I mean, anyways. We also were able to see the Russians near the Dobropilia front getting theirs as well. Oh, the Ukrainians are really clearing them out up here in the Dobropilia direction. Really cooking them up. This is the first Azov Corps, by the way. We can see them moving on around here and maybe clearing out another basement. Using the APCs to lay down some of that extra firepower. Some of that extra juicy. We see them continuing to clear out the basements and taking prisoners. Quite a large amount of them, as a matter of fact. And then raising their flag, as they always do, because the Ukrainian armed forces have not been defeated yet. And probably never will be.
Also, by the way, I don't mean to change the topic, but you know that guy that does the videos like around Area 51 and stuff like that, and he's got all these like he caught like I think it was like a week ago, he caught like what the Dorito shaped aircraft flying above the skies of Nellis or some of the test ranges the other day. You remember that guy?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think the same guy just caught the Beast of Kandahar. You know, the RQ-170 drone. He just caught that thing literally taxiing on a runway. This
Really?
is insane. Yeah, I can't show the video. We obviously can't show the guy's video here on the channel, but I'm literally sitting here watching on Twitter. I think this is the same guy. I'm not entirely sure. I'll have to double check. But literally, the Beast... literally got the Beast of Kandahar going down the taxiway, which is this like sort of stealth secretive drone here. So that's interesting. I've never really seen that before.
Oh my lord! What the hell he did? That is the RQ-170, man. That's I believe the real name of it is the Sentinel, if I'm not mistaken. But
Yeah, it
that
is.
that was it. Yeah, that was the one because like here's a rare government approved picture of the thing. That's it. Like the little landing gear divots near to the air intake. That's exactly a match.
Obviously I think what he's doing here is legal. I think he's probably on legal areas and stuff like that. But it seems to me like the government might be like, hey, how's this guy getting all this footage and stuff like that? I feel like they might be starting to like raise their eyebrows a little bit at this. This guy's getting a lot of pretty good footage here.
That is pretty wild. I'm not gonna lie, man. That's actually pretty crazy. And I mean, yikes. I mean, for operational security purposes, it's not really that bad to have something filmed at, say, Area 51 like that in broad daylight. But I mean, still, that's kind of getting around to like that's kind of questionable. But we did also get to see from our great friend Preston Stewart that today there's been an infographic put out. This was actually from the Center for the Strategic Institute study. Well, the let's see, what is it? What is it? The Strategic Studies Institute, something like the CSIS. That's all.
Jesus.
That's what I know the abbreviation is. But sadly, folks, I actually don't know what that stands for. But anyways, beyond that, we can see this frontline advance map. This shows y'all on average on any given day. I believe. I believe this is a per day table. The rate of advances that multiple different forces have been able to get in different times in different wars. So let's just go through them. During the beginning of the war in Ukraine in 2022, the Russian Federation's army was able to advance about 7.4 kilometers a day. In the Yom Kippur War at Chinese Farm, which was an Israeli offensive, the Israelis were able to advance about 5 kilometers a day on average. In the Battle for Kursk in 1943, the Nazi Germans were able to advance their armies at a rate of about 3.2 kilometers a day. In Galicia, in Russia, during the First World War, they were moving about 1.5 kilometers a day. In Kursk, during the Ukraine War, the average Ukrainian advance was about 1,200 meters or 1.2 kilometers a day. In Leningrad, in the USSR, the USSR's advance out of Leningrad in 1943 was done on average about a kilometer a day. In Kherson, in 2022, Ukrainian counterattack was about 590 meters a day. Now, let's move on down to the World War I battles that we have as examples here. The Battle of Belleau Wood, which was a breakthrough by World War I standards at the end of World War I in 1918, was an offensive conducted by the United States of America and was able to gain, on average, about 410 meters of front line per day. The worst battle of the First World War, which was the Battle of the Somme, which was the deadliest battle in British military history and was one of the deadliest battles of the First World War, which was considered an absolute and abysmal failure for the amount of ground that the offensive was able to gain on average 80 meters of ground per day. Now, let's compare that to all three major battles that are going on right now that the Russians are conducting in Ukraine. The Battle of Pokrovsk, which has been ongoing for 2 straight years now, advances on average about 70 meters a day, which is 10 meters short of the Battle of the Somme, which is the worst battle qualitatively in British military history. The Battle of Kupiansk, which is up to the north in the Kharkiv Oblast, the Russians are able to advance about 23 meters a day, and also suffered a major setback of losing the entire city at the very end of 2025. Then the Battle of Chasiv Yar is probably the craziest. They advance 15 meters a day. That's about roughly 45 feet every day for about several hundred men lost. So the war is pretty much at an absolute dead stalemate at this point. Nobody's advancing anywhere, especially the Russians. They're doing worse than the British did during the Battle of the Somme, which the Battle of the Somme was a turning point for a lot of people in the First World War because the amount of losses that the British took, along with the very little ground that they took in that offensive, started to lead a lot of people in the world to become very disillusioned with the First World War and wonder how long it was going to take and how many lives would have to be lost to see a front line move. Not at all. And that front line was moving even quicker than every Russian offensive is in Ukraine right now. That's pretty bad. But moving on from that and on into the Pokrovsk front, we did get to see some Russians getting hit down here by the 14th Brigade. Oh, look at these billboards. I mean, dang, look at that.
Look, the Russians have the eyes with the lasers in it because they're alpha chads.
Everything's going to plan, Jack. I mean, I don't know what was up with that old like Twitter post. You remember that?
What?
Where it was the last president, he had like the red laser beam eyes, and above it said everything's going to plan.
Oh yeah, just as the doctor ordered it. What was the phrase? It was like, what was the phrase that he kept using?
Everything's going as planned, I think.
Something like that. Or just as we planned it out, or just as we drew it up, or something like that.
Man, I think it was something like that. We also got to see the 68th Jaegers Brigade hitting the Russian forces as well. Look at them go.
I'm just dumbfounded here. This guy called an Arcus 170 on camera. I'm still looking at this footage right here. I'm analyzing it myself, looking at it, thinking, dang, this is unbelievable, actually, because like you said, there's only one official U.S. Air Force photograph of this airframe operating, and this is literally the first first video we have of the thing actually moving around on the taxiway. So, I mean, this is wild. We've never gotten a view quite like this. This is crazy.
Man, it honestly is pretty wild, I'm not going to lie. I mean, that's truly insane. But moving on from that clip from the 68th Jaegers and on down into the area near Velika Novosilka, we also were able to see the 37th Marine Brigade targeting and hitting Russian forces. When you see the Russians in the basement, there goes the anti-tank mine. And any minute now, the whole building will go up. Boof! Bleh! Look at that right there. Oh, some close one flying as well. Flight miles, they say. But that's the end of that clip. Looking like a little success right there. Moving on from that clip and on into the very, very extent of our news, we are now going to be moving on up to Kyiv to get to the speech from the President of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky. And so, if this loads, we'll have it. How's your day going? Good? Well, that's great to hear. So, without further ado, folks, here is the speech. Peach!
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Почався цей день з доповідей з регіонів в усіх наших областях. Від ночі на п'ятницю справді не було ударів по об'єктах енергетики. Майже не було. Крім Донецької області, де був один удар по газовій інфраструктурі. Удар авіабомб. Також зараз бачимо переорієнтацію Росії на удари по логістиці, по узловим станціям. Зокрема, був уражений один із вагонів Укрзалізниці. Спеціальний вагон – електростанція. Вранці це сталося на Дніпровщині. Важливо, що наші залізничники працюють та забезпечують сполучення в усіх регіонах. Весь день тривали і звичні атаки дронами, авіабомбами. На Харківщині був удар балістикою по складам американської компанії «Філіп Морріс». Була значна пожежа. Були удари по Нікополю, по Херсону, прикордонним районам Харківської, Сумської та Чернігівської областей. Наше українське ставлення абсолютно дзеркальне. Американська сторона говорила про утримання від ударів по енергетиці протягом тижня. І у ніч на сьогодні відлік почався. Залежить від партнерів, звісно, від Сполучених Штатів, як все це пройде. Україна готова дзеркально утримуватись від ударів, і сьогодні ми не завдавали ударів по російських енергооб'єктах. Була сьогодні нарада щодо розвитку нового компоненту нашої протиповітряної оборони. Цей компонент вважається малою протиповітряною обороною проти дронів. Це йдеться про шахеди, про жахливе російське сафарі проти цивільних наших південних містах, селах та в громадах поруч із кордоном. Треба більше захисту нашим людям. Чіткі завдання є для командування повітряних сил, для Міністерства оборони України. Всі ресурси є, щоб реалізувати це. Також був сьогодні на доповіді керівник воєнної розвідки Олег Іващенко. Передусім про актуальні російські військові плани та підготовку. Вони там в Росії не готуються до переходу до мирного часу. Готуються продовжувати штурми на наявному рівні, саме так, як це зараз відбувається. І ми передамо партнерам інформацію щодо цього. І єдине, що може це змінити – економічний тиск на Росію. Економіка та відповідні втрати від війни – це те, на що в Росії зважатимуть. Гроші у Росії повинні закінчуватись, щоб війна почала закінчуватись. Будемо передавати нашим партнерам і надалі факти співпраці китайських суб'єктів з Росією, шляхи обходу Росією санкцій світу за цю війну. Я говорив з президентом Румунії. Дякую йому ще раз за підтримку та готовність співпрацювати. Є напрямки енергетичної роботи, які можуть посилити обидва наші народи, нашу енергетичну безпеку. І це дуже важливо. Міністр енергетики України, команда уряду, офісу, всім треба працювати максимально оперативно, максимально повно працювати, щоб результат був. Я дякую всім в Європі, хто вже допомагає, готовий ще більше підтримувати Україну. Сьогодні було багато доповідей Рустема Умєрова. Він постійно на зв'язку з американською стороною. Україна готова до зустрічей, до усіх форматів дієвої роботи. Зустрічі мають бути повноцінні, саме так, як наші команди домовлялись і працюють. Щоб все, що напрацьовано, було реально виконано заради достойного і стійкого миру. І в Росії повинні визнати, що мир потрібен. Ще одне. Я доручив сьогодні уряду України, прем'єр-міністру, підготувати рішення, яке забезпечить справедливість для усіх людей, що були без опалення цими місяцями. Людям не мають нараховувати оплату за послуги, яких не було. Якщо не було опалення, не має бути і рахунків. Це не самі люди, а компанії повинні забезпечити відповідний перерахунок. Без бюрократії це має запрацювати. Слава Україні!
Героям слава.
And I got to say, that's good to hear that he's going to be making sure that no one gets billed for the fact that the power's out and there's no heating and the companies are still trying to bill them. That's pretty good to hear that they're doing that, because I think if that happened in America, some people would just go, well, you're high and dry. But beyond that, though, it is time for us folks
Charge them 10 times extra for losing power.
We don't want
Also,
the
by the
energy
way-
companies to become broker. We want them to become richer.
We want the CEOs to become richer, because having 10 billion is not enough. They need 100. But anyways, though, speaking of all that garbage, we're going to move on to something else here, which is actually a little bit more interesting, to say the least. In honor of what Zelensky's doing for the Ukrainian people, which is fantastic, by the way, we have seen another Russian penguin sighting inside of Ukraine, by the way, that I don't think we've had a chance to show. It looks like our good friend Anton Yeroshenko has actually edited out, at least he says in his post here, the ending, the finale of the video, which is good for us. But if you want to show the people this, looks like there's another Russian penguin lurking around.
I sadly cannot, well, I fortunately cannot show you the obliteration of this penguin, but we do have a second penguin. Mr. President, there has been a second penguin. Oh, no. But, oh, damn, that's loud. Oh, so here it is. Penguini.
There he is. Look at him go.
I wonder
What are
it
these
is.
Russians even doing? Like, I don't even know what these Russians are doing. Like, are they really trying to imitate the penguin from Werner Herzog's movie?
Maybe it travels to the mountains. The cameraman says, I can't bring it back. If I bring it back, it will begin the venture again. It's like, I don't know. I have no clue. But the penguins, they do be penguin. And I don't know who gave them this as a good idea. Like, any Ukrainian's going to go, oh, yes, penguins naturally live on the plains of Zaporizhia. Oh, well, and then they just move. It's like, no one's going to believe that. Nobody is believing that. Because also, penguins are not 5 feet tall. And they also do not have shoes. So those two things really go against the whole penguin deal. But
I think that's like, I think they're regressing. I think the Russian soldiers are regressing. They're losing their minds so much, and these guys right here know they don't really stand a chance. That they're like, you know how like some people come up with like imaginary friends, like, you know, in their head to like cope. I think the Russians are like, they're taking on the persona of a penguin to cope. Like, they're taking it on like intentionally, so that way they can feel like they're a penguin and not a soldier. And so they're wandering around in the penguin outfit. They're literally looking around like they don't even know what they're looking at, like a penguin would. Like, I don't even get it.
Bro, you know, that thing's got those sleeves on it, man, like the Romulans did in Star Trek The Next Generation, like the squared off sleeves.
Yeah, I think so, honestly.
Yeah.
You know, the penguin, the penguin has now become a symbol of Russian resistance, you know.
Russian resilience.
Yeah. Become the penguin. Become the penguin. As you can see, the man is becoming the penguin.
He travels off to the mountains. Like, man, he starts wandering to them 70 kilometers away. But anyways, with that, I hope we have been able to show you all the second sighting of the penguin. And it's time for us, folks, to move on and into the second segment of the stream where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And boy, howdy, folks, this is going to be a fun time. We have anything and everything to talk about, except for religion, politics, climate change, or whether the A-10 is relevant in modern warfare or not. Everything else is on the table, and that could lead to all kinds of interesting times here in this question segment. So, without further ado, Matthew, please take it away.
All right. So, also, by the way, to answer someone's question they had earlier, they were talking about that RQ-170 that we were talking about. It's just a recon drone to our understanding. It's much smaller than like a Reaper. It's a very small. I think it's like 14 feet in wingspan. Also, it was used during the Venezuela operation, by the way. And the way we know that is because by accident, the U.S. Air Force posted a photo of an airman who happened to be accidentally wearing the patch of that group that actually pilots the RQ-170. So they removed the photo after they realized the screw up, but it was too late. The damage had already been done. So that's how people speculate that the RQ-170 was used in Venezuela. Some people even go as far as to speculate that the discombobulator was deployed on the RQ-170, but we don't know that part. All we know is it flew in, it did recon, and that's all we know. But it's a pretty interesting little thing here. I think it's intended to replace the U-2. I think that was what it was intended to replace, which seems a little hard to believe because the U-2 was a totally different system than this thing right here. But it's stealth. It can get through all the Iranian air defense systems, largely undetected. I'm sure they've been using it there quite a bit. I think the Iranians, in fact, actually captured one back in 2011.
Yes, they did. There it is.
And they guess what they called it? They reverse engineered it, meaning they copied and stole it. They called it a Shahed, to everybody's dismay.
And also, they put a mesh grate on there in air intake for some reason. I'm sure we all know why. But, you know, some people are like, well, what do you mean? Why? Also, this thing looks like, oh my god, dude, look at the wing spars right here. Dude, this thing was made in a shack. I can promise you that, with like a file.
Oh, it's probably made of a wood.
Man, they said, Inshallah, we shall build a better one. And then they made that garbage. Like, this is very nice of me. But it's kind of a little crazy, though, because everyone's like, oh, the RQ-170, it's super secret. Meanwhile, the Iranians actually have a legitimate RQ-170. The U.S. even admitted that that was ours, and that they had somehow actually forced it to land and then recovered it inside of Iran. So, a little bit interesting on that one. So, you know, one of them has been caught before.
You know, this thing got its reputation. Like, the reason why it became known as like the Beast of Kandahar is it would literally be like how that Johnny Quest episode where they're like, "Look, the Yeti." They would literally see these things flying over their head, like in Afghanistan. Like, these things would fly low, like they would fly very low, and people would spot them. They'd be like, "Hey, look, there it is." Obviously, they couldn't pick it up on radar or anything because it's stealth, but they could visually see it. So they would look up and literally point at it and be like, "Look, it's the Beast." It's like it was terrorizing Afghanistan for a very long time. I think as far back as like 2008 or even earlier back than that. This thing's been around for a minute.
Look, a Yeti. Anyways, man, that's really crazy, honestly. Interesting, though. Interesting. But with that, it's time for us to get on into our questions. What do we got, Matthew?
So jumping right back into our super chat questions here, this one goes to none other than Truck and Chef. And thank you very much, Truck and Chef, for that support. We do appreciate that $50 donation. He said, "Good evening, enforcers. Out here on the roads, I have seen a lot of military movement on flatbeds. In the past 2 weeks, I saw a train of tanks rolling out of El Paso, Texas, seeing convoys of Hummers. Also parked next to me is a M270 tracked."
Oh, that's pretty interesting right there. An M270, you say? An M270, An M270? You mean the MLRS, the multiple launch rocket system? You mean this thing right here? Oh, that's pretty cool, actually. That's really neat. Generally, a lot of U.S. military movements happen a great deal in the United States within the lower 48 because we move equipment from repair and relocation facilities to training grounds, and sometimes we just move them around basically to make sure they don't sit idle for too long. So it doesn't really suggest much of anything, especially if the movements are well within the heart of the United States, like, say, the Midwest and elsewhere. Well, actually, more so the West in places like this. If it makes it to a port, though, that's when you really want to pay attention, because if it makes it to a port like, say, Charleston Harbor or something like that, then you know that it's actually going overseas. So right now, I'd say that that's mostly probably a lot of movement stateside at the moment, just to move stuff around, to repair it, get people out to training and whatnot. But it probably doesn't indicate all too much, because if you're out there on the roads a good bit, a lot like you are, like hell, even to be entirely honest, when we moved from Alabama here to Salt Lake, we saw a lot of military equipment on the way out there on the interstate. We were like, wow, look at that. And there wasn't even really anything going on back then when we were actually moving. It was just a whole bunch of movements from base to base, relocation from one facility to the next. So I would say it probably doesn't indicate all too much, though. But if you happen to drive by a harbor and you see that it's, say, a car loading facility, like a roll-on, roll-off area like this, and you see some tanks or APCs sitting out in a yard somewhere around here, that's when you know that something is actually being moved out of the country. So a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that does address that incredibly well, and thank you so much for being one of our late-night truckers who listen to the show to keep them awake while they keep the nation's economy and industries rolling. And so with that, a humongous thanks to you so much once again, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And with that, we're on to this one, which goes to Chris Feilbach, who puts in a 50. And thank you very much, Chris, for that support. And we do appreciate you very, very much. And Chris said, sometimes I test to see how long it takes on X for a message to be sent and received on a stream. It's usually about 6 seconds. And with the X outage earlier, yours has taken over an hour. Or you have some setting to limit notifications. It reads test.
Interesting. I'm guessing that there was some sort of an issue earlier on in the stream because it was affecting me heavily. Like, it hardly would pull anything up. Now it's pulling stuff up fine, so I guess it was some sort of a limited outage. I was thinking that for a second there, it might be related to some sort of a bit of info that came out earlier today. Give me your wildest party stat. Oh, man. Funny stuff. But not really, to be entirely honest with y'all. It's just kind of a little bit funny how sad it is, you know, like it really is. But anyways, a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel keep running. And thank you for sharing that information with us. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Ella MC Wheels Nafo, who puts in 25. And thank you very much, Ella, for that $25 support. We appreciate that as well. And Ella said, greetings, enforcers and LSA. Hope you're doing well. I just want to ask y'all, what is the name of the orchestra that plays in the intro? Absolutely love hearing it every night. Long live the LSA and Slava Ukraine.
And long live the Lee Spring Army and Slava Ukraini. And to answer your question, it is Budapest Scoring out of Budapest, Hungary. Budapest Scoring is one of the few orchestras out there that is decently affordable. And when I mean affordable, it still costs thousands of dollars for, you know, a couple of minutes of music. But it is decently affordable, and they're also incredibly high quality. And what's actually interesting about Budapest Scoring, as far as an orchestra, is that the orchestra has done the soundtrack for Squid Game. So if you ever watched Squid Game, the soundtrack for Squid Game was done by the same orchestra that did our intro, which is pretty cool to say, honestly. Like, that's a really neat little fact. Also, another thing that they've done, I think they did the soundtrack for the movie Die Hard, which is, of course, a Christmas movie, and a whole bunch of other movies as well. Like, hell, I can just go pull up Budapest Scoring and tell you all the other ones that they've done. But let's see here. Let me see if I can get this for y'all. Let's see here. Credits. Oh, yeah, here we go. So let me see if I can tell you all some of the movies that they've done. So they did the movie... Let's see, they did the movie Get Out. If y'all have ever watched Get Out, they did the soundtrack for that. They did the soundtrack for the movie Left Behind. They also did the soundtrack for... I'm trying to see if I can get some names that would be very easily recognized. Oh, yeah, they did the soundtrack for the Netflix special Medal of Honor. They've also done the soundtrack for Diablo, as well as... Let's see here. Trying to see if I can find the other ones that people would easily know. Damn. Like, they've done a lot of these, like a lot of smaller projects as well. So I'm trying to see if I can find you all the bigger ones. Jeez. Let's see here. Damn, dude, they got like a million credits. I'm trying to scroll through this really quickly and find the stuff that folks would know. Oh yeah, for video games, they've done the soundtrack for Total War Attila, Total War Warhammer. They also did the soundtrack for Injustice 2, Morrowind, and also they did the soundtrack for the Zootopia video game by Disney. So they've done a lot of work on a whole bunch of different soundtracks. Those are just some of them. That's not even all of them. But they also did Die Hard. So that's really cool, honestly, that we were able to get the orchestra that does that to do that for our show. And also another thing that's really cool because an orchestra would not be complete without a orchestral score, is that our composer, whose name is Marcos Barilari, who did the actual composition for the pieces, he actually is a composer for Disney Pixar. So, we basically had an A-team put together, a Disney Pixar composer who actually works for Disney, and then also the orchestra that did the soundtrack for Squid Game and a whole bunch of other major titles that also did our orchestration as well. So it's a really cool orchestra. I've always been proud of our intro, and also I have to be very proud of it because it cost a lot of money. And that's also the crazy factoid that I have to put out about that, is that doing our entire intro, including the music that we do not show on air anymore, that cost roughly, I think if I remember right, it was somewhere in the ballpark of $10,000 to $12,000 to do all that. So every minute of music costs over $1,000 in the intro. That's why it will never go away, much to a very small number of people's dismay, is because it costs so much money. That's honestly just the straight up answer. It costs so much money, I have to play that for literally hundreds, if not over 1,000 streams to make it economically make sense. So the intro will be around for an incredibly long time. And I made sure that we were not going to sacrifice for quality on that. And also it had another secondary fact in it as well, in that we own the rights to all of that music, so we can't ever get copyrighted for that. We could possibly get copyrighted for other music, although most people would pretty much make their music public domain as long as they weren't like abusing it. We generally want to make sure that we don't get into issues with copyright. So we wanted to have our own soundtrack, so then we kind of had to have that as a necessary expense. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and a humongous thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Rad Doctor, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Rad Doctor, for that support. And he said, if Iran built a nuke and somehow hit the USA, how should we respond? How should we respond? Let's see here. Down to bedrock. But Enforcer, what say you?
To the bone. It's like, well, you nuke him back. That's just like, there's not even really an answer at that point. Our nuclear doctrine specifically states that a nuclear attack upon the United States is to be met with a larger nuclear attack in return. So if Iran fires a nuclear weapon at us, we glass the surface of the Islamic Republic of Iran. So I hope that does address it the best I can. And also, before someone says it, I know some moralist is about to come in here and say, what about all the innocent people? Yeah, what about the innocent Americans that just got obliterated in a nuclear hellfire in that scenario? What about them? Like, it's like, before anyone even comes in and says something like, what about all the innocent people? Yeah, what about all the innocent people in the United States that just got vaporized in that hypothetical scenario? What about them? Are they to not be avenged? Like, that's how our nuclear doctrine works. It's mutually assured destruction. If someone fires a nuclear weapon at us and millions of innocents die in the United States of America, that's going to happen to the country that fired off that nuclear weapon. That's the reason why no one ought to attack us with nuclear arms, because it's going to be absolutely barbaric. And so with that, we're on to the next one. But a huge thanks to you for the support, and I hope that does answer your question well.
And also, the little crapper that Iran draws a fire is going to sputter out before it even gets to us. And also, we'll probably intercept it if it's only like one, because they're not going to have like a whole bunch. So we'll probably have a chance to intercept that thing. Maybe. Like, we don't have a very good interception rate when it comes to ICBMs, but we could at least try.
We
That's
do.
a 50-50 chance.
We do. We
Yeah.
have the GMD. This is our only missile system that is designed purpose-built to intercept an ICBM. It only has 50 interceptors, though. So basically, this is like our rogue state deterrent, like on North Korea or Iran. Like, if North Korea
Isn't it
fired...
like a 50-50, though? It's like a 50-50 interception rate.
I don't think so. I think this actually has a higher interception rate. Let me go see if I can pull that up. GMD missile ICBM interception rate. Let's see. And so back when the tests were conducted in 1999, it had a 57% success rate. So it is really close to 50-50. You're pretty much right.
Yeah. That's what I was saying during my explanation. I was saying we have an okay chance of shooting it down. We could try, but once again, this is not a fail-safe. Like, this is not something here that is going to guarantee success when it comes to shooting down an ICBM. So you don't want them being fired at your country in the first place, because you don't want to hang your life on this right here for sure. This is not something to rest all your hopes on.
Well, I got something for you, Busta. I got something for you. If it has a 57% success rate, then just fire 2 of them at the ICBM, one right after the other. If one,
That ain't the way it works, champ. That's not the way that the probability works.
well, if the first one misses, the second one has a pretty decent chance of hitting, and if it doesn't, then we'll send up a third one.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you could if it was one interceptor, you could, or I mean, one ICBM.
I mean, at this point in time, it'll only be one ICBM. So in reality, we have a very limited ability to intercept ICBMs. We maybe have like 10 chances to do that with this arsenal, and then that's it. After that, you would have to count on an SM-3 from a destroyer or a cruiser, or nothing. So not really a lot of defense against it, but we do technically have defenses against Iranian ICBMs if they were launched in very small number. But that's what it is. So I hope that does address that well, as a little bit of an aside there. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to I Will Eat Your Hot Dogs, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much for that support. They said, "Aw, man, I'm the hot dog man. Aw, man, I'm not that crazy guy. Aw, man, but here's some toilet paper."
Aw, man, I gotta thank you for the support. My position is compromised. Aw, man, I have to move. Aw, man, isn't it terrible what you do unto others, they do unto you? Aw, man, politically minded people like him never get that. Aw, man, it's terrible. Aw, man. But beyond that, I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say, it's always great to know that folks like you are helping this channel to keep on running and helping us to be able to have a Costco chicken fund. And it's just an incredible thing. It's a wonderful thing. And a huge thanks to you so much once again. And I see a lot of people talking about that whole deal with the hot dog man. I gotta say, like, I actually listened to the little 10-minute deal that he did, Matthew. Like, this is terrible. I'm like, man, it's like, yeah, it's terrible that people like you are in the world who do that sort of stupid stuff over domestic politics. It's like someone just like you just did that to you. He did that to us folks for years. I'd say absolutely what has been done to him is an invasion of privacy and generally unlawful and menacing someone. But that guy also did it to us, and that guy is so, like, stupid and cracked out. He can't understand that the very people that are putting him in fear, he is one of those people. So basically the hunter's becoming the hunted at this point by the very same mindset of people. All these stupid political people that have no sense, they don't get it. They're the people who are actually tearing the country down. I'm just going to be completely frank. It's people like that who think that the laws don't apply to them, that basically turn the place into the Wild West. They're the problem with the country, on the left and the right, because none of them are smart, none of them have any sense. They just attach themselves to something like it's the Mavs or some shit at a football game or a basketball game, and they just stick with that forever, and they just go around harassing people that disagree with them. It's like, it's like, surprise, surprise, Buster. It's not good to be on the receiving end of something like that. And I think the clown's finally, I'll be entirely honest with you, I don't even think the clown's going to get that. He's having what's being done to him right now is the same thing that he did to us and everyone else. It won't even connect in his small pea brain that is not a good thing to do to people, and he'll probably do it to more people again after he ends up escaping this guy who's chasing him down. You would just think that someone like that would eventually learn, but the sad truth is that they won't. And they'll continue to basically cause terror and harm and everything else to whoever they run into and cross paths with. But I will say, pretty damn ironic. That I will say. But a huge thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Okay, so also, by the way, I was going back, I was trying to do the math on that theory you just had a second ago about the 2 interceptors being fired, because each interceptor missile from the GMD missile you're talking about that intercepts the ICBMs that come toward the United States, they each have a 57% success rate, according to what we know publicly. So if you model that using the Bernoulli process, but you identically distribute the trials between the 2, the probability of each is 0.57 in a decimal. So if you have at least one successful intercept across 2 sequential engagements, then you use the complement rule to compute the joint probability of the dual failure events. And you get, I think the equation is 1 minus 0.57 squared. You subtract that from the unity of the whole equation. Then you get an aggregate system kill level probability of about 0.81, so about 81%. So that's about what you'd have. If you fire 2 of them, it would be an 81% effectiveness rate of actually shooting down one single ICBM fired by Iran.
That's pretty good odds. I mean, that's pretty decent. Like, that's not exceptionally good odds, but that's really good odds.
Yeah, and that's reflecting the nonlinear gain in effectiveness too. So you're not just simply doubling the single shot performance. You have to do it in a layered way.
Now I have to ask you, what AI platform did you use to get that analysis?
Now I was just using my phone calculator.
So what was up with all the verbs and grammatical statements that you were making there? What was up with those?
Well, I derived the first part from calculus 2, and then the other part actually from algebra.
Oh, like real?
No.
I was about to be like, you did not. I was about to, bro, you said yeah. I'll be like, you're lying right now. Like,
here's what I did. Here's what I did. At first, I just asked AI. I just asked the basic question and did the simple equation. I said, come up with some fancy jargon for me to explain this equation, and it gave me that whole jargon. Give me that whole jargon right there.
Man,
I said, make it as complex as you possibly can. Give me the gibberish. It gave me the gibberish. Yeah, I was just going on.
I'm not going to lie, dude. You sounded like someone from a corporation, like a corporate office, like doing the whole jargon rigmarole deal. I was like, he did not come up with this on his own. There's no way. Like, we don't talk like this. Like, we never talk like that.
No. That's about. I just artificially increased my IQ by about 50 points. That was way above my pay grade right there with that whole system. But you got to admit though, like it sounded good. Like if you're going for corporate bullshit, you might be able to get a job speaking like that.
Dude, you might have a future in BlackRock. Like, man, you might go down to their office and see. We need to find out right now.
I'll tell you what. Also, shout out to Perplexity, by the way. Fancy old Perplexity. You gotta love them.
Man. I gotta say, I do have to say, I tell you. But anyways, with that in mind, folks, it is time for us to move on into the next one after that. But I will say this, though. 81% interception rate with 2 interceptors fired. That's really good odds. I mean, like, you're shooting a 4 in 5 chance of shooting it down at that point. That's pretty decent odds.
Yeah, it's not too bad. There is an actual equation though, like seriously speaking, that it did use to come up with the probability, but you don't simply just double it. Like if it has a 57% chance of success with 1 interceptor, you can't just double it and say it's like 100 and whatever that is, 14% or whatever. You can't do that. But there's an equation that you come up with 87% probability of shooting it down with 2.
87? I thought it was 81.
No, it's 87.
Oh, 87. Well, that's way better than 81. I mean, that's like technically, I think, like what some of our more advanced systems like the AIM 260 get for hit rates. That's pretty decent right there. But what I will say though is obviously, Matthew, it's not 57 plus 57 because no value can be greater than 100%. Because that wouldn't make any sense. Like what I'm saying though is like in military sense, what I was saying earlier is in military sense, if something doesn't have a 100% rate of a hit, you just fire off a second one of those, and that greatly increases your odds. Because if it gets through the first one, it's probably not going to get through the second one. I mean, that's not mathematically sound. That's just logically sound.
Yeah, that's true. I would agree with you.
Like for example, you have some guy running up on some other dude, and they both have spears. Well, the spearman, the enemy spearman, might kill our first spearman, but if we send up a second one, there's a pretty decent chance he isn't going to make it through the second one because now we're outnumbering the guy 2-1. Like, that's basically what I was saying earlier. Like, there's no statistical, mathematical, empirical proof behind that. It's just more so reasonable assumption that if you send up 2 against 1 and they have a decent chance of succeeding on their own each, then it would have to be overwhelming odds in our favor, but not 100%. But anyways.
But that's if you don't factor in the Thor system that's in orbit. If you don't factor that in, if you factor the Thor system in, and also you factor in, I think it's the flux capacitor with a resistive load, I think. Something like that. It'll shoot it down for sure.
Man. That's deep. Man, I like that, bro. That's deep. Also, I saw someone say, Coach always told me to put in 110%. You saying that ain't real? Oh, hell yeah, that ain't real. Nah, there's nothing greater than 100%. 100% is the max. Saying anything above 100%, you're just exaggerating. Like, oh, I'm putting in 110%. Well, 110% is your new 100%. So that means that 100% is more like 93% or so. Like, that's how I look at it. Like, it's either...
I hate to tell it to you, but Coach was lying to you.
Coach wasn't telling you truthful. Coach was lying to you.
Coach. Punt it down the field, Coach. We're going to do a Hail Mary on this one. We're going to see if we can try to get this to the end zone in quarter time.
Man, someone makes football a little bit too much of their life when they become, I believe it's a senator or a representative of a state, and then they have to take a picture in front of the U.S. Capitol building, like spinning a football. Like, I just feel like that's going a little bit too far. Like that person probably shouldn't have been elected in politics because if they're that obsessed with a pigskin ball, I have a feeling that they might not really be that good at policy, just to be entirely frank. But that's just me. Like it's kind of the same thing, like with other people who have been in other career professions and they just don't really seem to let that go, like some people who say we're in the WWE and then they become the governor of a state, say like one up here in the north. I'm not saying anything in particular. I just feel like not to discredit these people for what they're doing, but at the same time I feel like that's not really where people should be coming from that are trying to get in the political arena, because they never really had to deal with the realism of politics their entire life. They more so dealt with the fantasy of it. It's like a background thing that didn't really affect them, and they didn't really have to know exactly a great deal about it. That's what I'm saying. But anyways,
it's called football. It's called football, but they only really use their feet. They use their hands. They only really use their feet.
You see, we're gonna pass this bill like a Hail Mary. We're going to throw that thing on down to the wide receiver and get that thing to the touchdown. And I'm like, oh, no, you lost me. You lost me here. Because the Senate floor ain't set up like a football field, coach. This is the damn Senate. So, stop being stupid and treat it like the Senate. But anyways,
I think all politicians should probably have about $100 million in their bank account before they can get elected. That's a good barrier to entry.
You know what, folks? I'm going to start conducting some trading on the stock market like it's a damn Alabama football tournament. I'm telling you what, we're going to be doing nothing but winning touchdown after touchdown. But instead of plus 7 points, it's going to be plus $100,000 in my account. Damn it. But anyways.
My mama said never waste a good opportunity to make a buck.
And damn it, we ain't. We're
not missing none.
They called us the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company because we bringing in the dough. We bringing them in. I tell you,
through any means necessary.
Oh man, my mama always told me. And then on the flip side, the top 1% owns half of this country's wealth, and people ought to be reasonable. Anyways, I'm going to my summer home. It's 1 of 3. I'll see y'all next season. It's like, what? It's like, hold up, man. It's like, what do you mean by this? What do you mean? It's like you're a champion of the people, but you own 4 homes? What the hell are you talking about? It's like, 4 homes? It's like most of us can't even afford one. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah, also those your grandparents, you gotta tell your grandparents, don't buy 15 houses, only buy 10 houses. Like you're gonna have to lower your standards here. Don't buy 15 houses at a time, because everybody's grandparents are buying 15 houses at a time. Tell them to only buy 5. Only buy 5 houses. You're gonna have to limit yourself. I know this is asking a lot, but only buy 5 houses, please, because the economy's in rough shape, and we're gonna have to increase the supply on the market for housing.
And you know something, folks? Instead of buying your kids 30 dolls, you ought to just buy them 2. And sure, they'll cost a couple of bucks more, but you only need 2, really. That's a part of making America affordable again. Remember, everyone, is that things become more expensive and you buy less of things. That's clearly what makes America more affordable. And also, we cannot forget to mention, everyone, that any attempts to state what might be an erosion of democracy should always be met with a strongly worded letter, because nothing ever says American values like strongly worded letters. But anyways, enough of that, folks. We're getting ahead of ourselves here. It's enough as it is, folks, with the pressure that all of these great officials are feeling right now from what came out of the Department of Justice today. We don't want to put them through anything else. I mean, they've already been through enough. Don't you think it's enough to be harrowed with the idea of all of the secret information that might be about you or people that you know up there coming out about you? I mean, don't you think that's stressing them out enough already? We ought to not be giving them too much trouble. I mean, they got enough problems.
It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. I mean, those releases today, that was enough to make someone sick to the stomach. I mean, today, that was pretty rough. I'm not going to lie. That was pretty bad. It makes you wonder, because I don't think they've released everything. I think this is the final release. I'm not really sure what's up with that, because I don't think they've released everything. I'm not totally clear on that. But the stuff that came out today was enough to turn a stomach.
You know, what's weird, though, is that all that stuff came out today. I didn't hear someone saying thank you for your attention to this matter. I found that very interesting. I thought we wanted attention on every matter.
Yeah, I don't know. Every time these releases come around, it's like I go into like some deep dark depression. I'll tell you what, it's rough times when a release happens. It's a tough thing.
Oh, I tell y'all, it is really tough. I mean, if y'all read some of those emails, get me to your wildest party, stat. Give me some medicine because I happen to get some sort of a disease from some little fun time. You know, you read stuff like that and you just sit there and go, wow, that's really messed up. Like, there's really no other way to look at that rather than that's really messed up, you know? Like, you have to laugh at the absurdity of it a little bit, because it's like, never, like, this is the stuff that people would write in books that would be so over the top, people would go, real life couldn't even be like that. This is clearly a work of fiction because nothing would ever get close to this, yet it is. And it's like, huh, that's something else right there. But anyways, enough of that, folks. We've been spending too much time on this. Y'all ought to come by, folks, to Utah. Pass on by and have a lemonade or something. We'll just act like it's the olden times of like a few years ago when this really wasn't that big of a problem. And you know, we only had to worry about World War III every month instead of every week. But anyways, with that, it's time for us to get on and into the next one.
And our next one goes to I will eat your hot dogs once again. And actually, I actually forgot to put the red check mark on this one, but thank you very much once again for that support. Also, by the way, a big shout out to you, Trister1, who put in a 20. And thank you very much, Trister, for that support. And also, it's good to see you once again, Doc. And Doc did not leave a comment, but we do appreciate that. Enforcer, what say you?
And we thank you for the support, helping this channel to keep it running. You didn't throw in a comment, but we're still greatly appreciative of folks like you. And we thank you greatly for helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Cass, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Cass, for that support. They said, thanks for the daily updates. And how come there's no membership option?
Well, generally we find memberships to be tacky, and also it kind of monetizes the whole thing a little bit too much, in my opinion. Like, I know a lot of people will be like, it's free money, take it, but at the same time, I consider, like, me personally, I consider reputation to be a currency that's more valuable than money, and I like the appearance that we only accept money when we absolutely need to, which is through super chats, super thanks, Patreon support, and other stuff like that, because there is a beauty, especially in the modern day, where every single company has to squeeze everyone dry for every single cent. There's a little bit of a beauty in it, in my opinion, to not over monetize our show. I feel like that makes it a lot more authentic, because life isn't all about money. And while we do make a decent living on this thing, I don't think that we should be making any more of a decent living on this thing by taking memberships and stratifying our chat and really destroying the kind of community that we've made in the process. Because if you look in the chat right now, basically everyone is an equal, and I generally like that, especially considering that it's a public forum. Like, there's nobody that comes in with like the super gold platinum membership, you know, where you're scared if, oh, I say something against them, you know, a mod might ban me because, you know, they seem to carry a lot of weight with the channel because they're basically a public sponsor of it. I really like it more so that way, because it makes it to where people can actually feel comfortable around each other and not feel like it's some sort of a stratified social hierarchy. And also on top of that, I just don't like how it looks. Whenever I go around to any channel that has a membership option and it's active and they're in the live chat, it just looks really tacky, because some messages will be in the normal sort of a format, and then other ones will be like neon green or something, and I just, I don't really like that, to be entirely honest. But I do thank you for the support and hope this channel keep running. I hope that does answer that fairly well. But while of course life is about paying the bills and keeping the lights on, I don't want to make it about that all too much to where we start to over monetize things. I don't really like that. And, you know, I hope that people really do appreciate that we don't over monetize the thing, because everything in the world does. You have to pay $20 a month subscriptions for about 4 different streaming services at this point. You're almost paying as much for that as you are cable. You have to pay for this and that plus, or this and that gold, or this and that platinum. There's nothing anymore that's just free to play where someone's not trying to just run your pockets. And I feel like, I hope that people appreciate that we're not doing that here.
Man, I think they get it. I think they get it.
But I have to make it clear, folks, because I gotta say,
man, you're over explaining. You're over explaining a lot on this one, man. I think the people get it.
But The greed, Matthew. It's the sickening
you're
greed.
You're explaining this one like 3 or 4 times over.
It's the gluttony of it, Matthew, of the world these days that makes me have to say that 3 or 4 times over. Because, like, whenever I say that, some people act like we're absolutely crazy, or I'm absolutely crazy for saying that. And I'm like, I just want to say, like, everything does not have to be about money, and that's why we don't do membership.
Right.
Amen, brother. Amen.
You're good.
No, I mean,
you're about to go
Lord
explain
have
it for a
mercy.
5th time.
But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that. Well, all I'm saying, I'm just kidding. But huge thanks to you once again for the support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Darren Quinn, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Darren, as well, for that support. He said, Australian government is kicking China out of lease over port in Darwin, and China is pissed.
Hey, that's actually good to hear. And the port of Darwin is actually a bit of a smaller one, but still fairly important, especially for Australia. And I got to say, good news to hear that. It's good news to hear the Chinese are losing some of their control over certain areas. And I got to thank you massively for the support and helping this channel keep running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And it's good to hear good news out of Australia. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on and into the next one.
And also a big shout out to Jose Diaz and Butchie777 for each putting in a $20 support. And both Jose and Butchie are longtime channel legends of the channel. They've literally been like a cornerstone. You know that part in Jenga where you can't take the brick out, otherwise the whole thing's going to collapse. They're kind of like that. They're a cornerstone. And we appreciate the both of you for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
That cornerstones, I says. Cornerstones. And I got to thank y'all massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. And so a big thanks to y'all. Y'all are cornerstones of this community. We always thank y'all for being here and supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Yenya Totals. Yenya Totals. Yenya Totals. That's what they call them. Totals. They call them Totals. They put in a 20. Thank you so much, Yenya, for that support. They said, I appreciate your attention to the manure. Thank you so much. I appreciate the attention. Attention to the manure. But Enforcer, what say you?
It's an absolute witch hunt what's happening against me. Sure, what some people are saying might be true, but it's absolutely wrong that they say it. It's really wrong. And anything that mentions me in a negative light, we will have to immediately silence it in any way possible. If it's up on the website, take it down and then put it back up because we realized it looks really bad. And then at the same time, we'll tell everyone that we're the most transparent ever, although in reality, we're as least transparent as everyone else because it's hard to drain the swamp when you're a part of it, when you're a frog living on a lily pad in that swamp. So a humongous thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel possible. We wouldn't be able to keep it running. And one day we wouldn't be able to run for president in 2040. We're going to run a beautiful election. It's going to be a big, beautiful election, the likes of which has never been seen. And of course, if I lose the election, I'm going to immediately challenge it and say the entire election system is fake. But a big thanks to you.
Excuse me. You have to remember that when you're talking about manure, manure, you don't want to clump it. It's like something you do on a farm when you're farming vegetables over health. You want to spread the manure, spread it around like sharing the wealth. I know you don't understand much about that, but you got to spread the manure and give the field a little extra across the square footage.
All right, everyone, I'm going to show you how to drag your ass across the floor and get a tapeworm out there and back up.
we call this one the Fido. Drag it. Come on, get it, Fido.
You see, if we look at that dog out there, we can really get some examples of how to fix the healthcare system. When people get worms, you just drag your ass across the floor.
You see, it's really not Fido. It's really Doggo that has the technique down pat. Look at the way he drags with the hind legs. He's got some real speed going there. Look at him dragging across that field.
Oh, man.
Fido's single-handedly improving the U.S. agriculture industry a drag at a time.
I can tell you this whole thing is twofold. One, they get to drag their ass over the farm fields and that fertilizes it. Secondly, they also get the worms out. And we all know that the worms are not good unless they're in your brain. But anyways, A big thanks to you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And of course, we're about to be moving on and into the next one. But a huge thanks to you so much once again.
Indeed. And also, moving on to our next one here. That one got me winded, actually. That impression actually got me winded. I feel like I got punched in the gut. Like, that's crazy. But our next one here goes to some Canadian dude who puts into 14. And thank you, good sir, as well. He said, cigar is lit. And let the news start rolling, fellows. Real random. What is y'all's favorite Canadian service rifle?
Ooh, that would be the Colt C7, actually. It would be the current one that they have. Because I like the older... well, kind of older-ish looking versions of the AR platform. It's fairly bland looking, but I like them for that. You know, I think they look cool. Matthew, what would be your favorite Canadian service rifle?
I'll be honest with you, I don't know a whole bunch of Canadian service rifles. I don't really know a whole bunch. I didn't know the Canadians were like that.
Oh, hell yeah, they're like that. I mean, they're cool people. Oh, my God. Let me go take this off screen, folks, and let me go pull this up. Hang on. Canadian service rifles. Let's see here. I typed that whole thing in for it to do that. So, let me go get you the infographic here. All right. So, let's see. Oh, say, can you see? All right, here we go. Here is basically the wider variety over the past century of their service rifles. Which one is your favorite?
That's basically ours.
Shh, don't tell them. Like, don't tell them.
That's just all of our stuff. They're using our whole arsenal, but that's okay, though. We love the Canadians. I would say, let's see. I like that. What's that say? What's that bottom one say? Colt,
that's
Canada?
the C8.
What's that say?
That's
the C. I like that. I like that one.
That one's pretty cool. I mean, honestly, the C1 is actually pretty cool. It's just an FAL with wood furniture. I really like that. That looks really cool. And before that, it was literally just the British service rifle. So the Lee Enfield number 4, the Lee Enfield number 4 Mark 1, the Lee Enfield number 1 Mark 3, the Ross Mark 3. And then after they got the C1, which was basically like their last British-made service rifle, they then switched over to Colt, based out of the United States. And then they got the Colt C7, the Colt C7A2, and then the Colt C8, which is basically just the M4 version of their Colt C7. Basically what the Canadians use these days is just the M16A2 and the M4. That's basically what they use as well. But I would say that my favorite would be the C7A2. In my personal opinion, that's probably one of my favorites, or really more so the C7 or the C7A1. That's probably one of my favorite in my opinion, because it has that classic M16 kind of look to it, you know, and I like that. I appreciate that. But the C1 is pretty cool too. I like the FALs. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, and a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible and help us to keep this thing running, and we're always greatly appreciative of that. And so with that, it's time for us to move on and into the next one.
And our next one is going to go to none other than Robert Krogan, who put in a $10 support. And thank you very much, Robert, as well. He said, good evening, enforcers. He said, LSA, it's been a while since I sent a super chat question.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. And it's perfectly okay. Better late than never is what we always say. And I got to thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it running. And I hope that you've been enjoying it in the meantime. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, it's time for us to move on and into the next one.
And our next one goes to Moby Duck, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Moby Duck, for that support. He said, the regime's absurd bravado right now would make a bit more sense if it turns out they're further along in their nuclear program than we know. I love the channel and appreciate your work, guys. LSA from Nahant, Massachusetts.
Massachusetts? Where in the world would Nahant, Massachusetts be? Let's see if we can find your hometown. How do you spell that, Matthew? Nahant? Oh, well, that is. Oh, you're on the coast. Oh, you living in a nice spot. I can already tell by this picture. Oh, that looks good.
What is the property values around here? This looks like Martha's Vineyard.
Man, that looks like that house that like the Amityville house. Well, I mean, they all kind of look like that up here. This is where
what is this place called? Let's see, Nahant,
Massachusetts.
Oh, let's see what we're dealing with here. Holy moly! Good sir, must be living large. Let's see here. There's some doozies. I'm seeing 8,000 square feet, 10,000 square feet, 8,000 square feet, 6.5 million, 5 million, 4 million.
Holy moly!
I mean, here's an example. A condo in Nahant, Massachusetts, for what's 700 square feet is $400,000.
All right, Matthew, brace yourself. We're about to do a street view. Prepare for street view.
Put it down.
Holy moly, this is nice. This is actually really nice.
Holy moly! What in the world, Moby Duck?
Moby Dick, man. But I mean,
whoa! What
well, that's the real
hell?
name of the whale, man. That was the name of the whale. But bruh, this place is very nice. I gotta say, you live in a very nice part of the country right here. Now, this is the American dream. Let's see what it looks like getting close to the beach. So they got a little pile of stuff out here, but that is very nice. This is a very nice spot. Let's go to the beach. Let's see if we can get out on the coast. So we'll go here. Oh, wow, the tides are like British tides with, you know, how shallow it is out here. I mean, that goes out a long ways. But that is so
Like a tsunami
cool.
might be coming in.
Yeah, it kind of does feel like that. What in the world does seaside pizza look like? What kind of pizza do y'all get in this place? Oh, that looks
Oh,
pretty
that's
good.
pretty good, actually.
Yeah, that actually looks pretty good. Let's see, they got pizza, subs, and roast beef. They sell the staples. Like that, like, honestly, those are kind of my staples. So I mean, I respect that place. They also have the English throne chair, most likely with the stone of scone below it. Wealthy people do eat on the English throne, with the stone of scone below it, as one would. But let's see. What about right over here? What does this place look like near P Island? Wow, this is rocky. Man. If there were some mountains nearby.
Balboa.
Balboa, oh, huh?
Rocky Balboa.
Oh, Adrian. I did it. Oh, what do we got over here? We got, oh, they won't let us in. I guess it's like a gated community or, yeah, it is. Dang, I was wanting to see those. Oh, they got a little gate and everything. Honestly, this is a very nice place, though, I will have to say. I got to say, a huge thanks to you for enjoying our show all the way up there in Nahant, Massachusetts. And also, what is Lynn?
Also, by the way, we have more super chats to get to, by the way. We can't rabbit hole as long on each one.
Oh, come on now. You're about to rabbit hole on that RQ-170 Sentinel again. Let's just... Oh, this... Honestly, Boston's looking quite nice these days, I'd say. But still, also, can you reread his super chat just to make sure we covered everything?
He was just saying the regime's absurd bravado right now would make a bit more sense if they turns out they're further along in their nuclear program than we know.
That's I would agree with, and I think that's probably why they're feeling very confident. Is because they feel that they're close to a breakthrough, maybe. But a huge thanks to you for the support and help this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Truck and Chef, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Truck and Chef, as well. They said, keep up your good reporting, fellas. LOSA, and we'll never die, but long down the road. And speak of military movement on the road, I will watch this in the morning. And long live the Leaf Spring Army, and thank you.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And thank you so much for the kind words and sticking with us through thick and thin. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 20-pound donation from the Secret Vault. And thank you very much, good sir, Secret Vault, for that very heavy and very nice donation. He said, Enforcer Matt, the Iran bunkers, they weren't tilings dumped. It was evidence of quarrying, not dumping. That's for concrete mixing. They quarry stone and mix with concrete to reinforce the walls after tunnel boring, LSA. But now, the interesting thing with that is, me personally, I thought that they were actually using those lines of dump trucks, if this is what you're referring to evacuate the enriched uranium that they currently have. I thought that's what they were doing when they brought those dump trucks in. So, is he referring to the same thing?
I think he's referring to these tailings piles out here outside of these tunnels.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, then I'm talking about something different.
I would say that this isn't really used to reinforce the walls because that would be a lot of excess that wouldn't be needed that they would have bought and then dumped off in the middle of nowhere. This is definitely from the excavation process because they'd have to put it somewhere, and it would make a lot of sense to just drive a dump truck right out of the tunnel and then drop it off literally right out here. So I have a feeling that these are what they are. It's just tailings from the mining that was going on inside for the tunnel boring, because we have something similar out here right outside of Salt Lake City, this place right here, the Bingham Canyon Mine, and their operation is at a far larger level, but you can basically see the same little pilings right here, and this is from their mining operations in the pit over here. So I'd have a feeling that it's probably really similar to that, what we're seeing outside of those tunnels. So I do think for support, I feel like those little tailings piles aren't really for reinforcing the walls. I feel like that was when they were digging out the place to create the walls that would then need to be reinforced. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Little Bear, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Little Bear, for that support. And he said, sorry, Matt, and cheers, mate. And cheers to you as well, by the way. And we do appreciate that support very, very much. And also for being a longtime channel viewer as well. And we do appreciate you. And we also have a 10 from the Wolfman, who said, hello once again from America, Siberia, aka Wisconsin. Iran, with the recent events, is now a terrorist nation, and the U.S. does not negotiate with terrorists.
Oh, they've always been a terrorist nation for their whole existence, and I would definitely agree recently they've certainly been showing terrorist-like activities, and we should never negotiate with terrorists. I don't know why every administration has started to do that over the past 15 years, but we shouldn't. And so a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again, and with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. So our next one here, our next super chat question is going to go to Nick, who puts in a 10. He said, I wish I could do more, but thanks for all the great info and the fun streams. Legacy Media produces narratives and enforcers produce actual news. Bedtime beckons. Appreciate you guys, and LSA.
And a good night to you. I hope you sleep well, and thank you so much for the kind words. We always try our best to put forward the news in the most unbiased way as possible. But of course, being an American, we will make sure to support American and Western interests. And I got to thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have another 10-pound donation from the Secret Vault. And they said, Enforcer, mistake from earlier. The Iran underground facilities were not tailing dumped. It was dug out for underground or taking underground to make walls secure for the concrete.
And I thank you for the support, but I like, if that was the case, why do they have so much of it left over? Like, why did they have a 600-foot long by 300-foot wide and about a 40-foot tall pile of the stuff? Like, that sort of stuff you would most likely buy on as needed and buy an exact amount instead of this much excess at both tunnel entrances that clearly have access roads that appear to have been driven on quite often and clearly look to be dumped. Like, you know, like, I would say, like, I don't really think that's the case. I might be dying on a hill that might be incorrect, but it just seems to me like this is definitely tailings from the boring operation that was happening in the mountain. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Captain Mentions, who puts in a 10. They said the Alabama executive branch is going to look more like, let's see here, what are they saying? Let's see. They said more like executive bench soon enough. I guess it's a football reference. He said, how many old coaches and players do we need running a state government?
In Alabama, the answer is an unlimited number because in the state of Alabama, football is literally king. The highest paid like state employees in the state of Alabama are college football coaches. The entire state revolves around football. I gotta say, if I ever had the largest complaint about Alabama, it was the fact that somehow anyone in the state of Alabama could relate anything to football. Like they like their wife could come up to him and go, I'm divorcing you, and they'd be like, oh man, this is like when Bear Bryant had to do that thing in the 4th down. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? It's like, why does everything have to be football? Like, a lot of people in Alabama were like that, and it would drive me insane. It really got me to the point I couldn't stand football because I didn't know how in the hell everyone could be so obsessed with a couple of guys throwing a leather ball around the field and then running until they got slammed to the ground. Like, I just never really got that. But beyond that, though, the answer is an unlimited number. So I'm sure the entire state legislature would be filled with high school quarterbacks and college quarterbacks in no time. Probably high school quarterbacks. But a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $5 support from Mr. Shipwright. And thank you very much, Mr. Shipwright, as well. He said glazed blueberry donuts, mocha coffee, and the Enforcer is superior trucking fuel.
Hey, and thank you so much for the kind words and the support, and that's great to hear, and we thank you so much for saying such kind words about our show. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Hoodoo, Texas, who puts in a 5. He said, I watched The Day After, 1983. Very sobering, and it had a nuke war starting with East German unrest. Things got out of hand very quick. Must watch.
Interesting, and I will try and take a look into that. And a humongous thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it running. And so with that, we're on the next one.
And we also have a $5 support from JT Harbor, and thank you very much, JT, as well. He said, the topography maps from the U.S. military show it. A simple Google pulls them up to give you the actual numbers.
Thank you so much for the support and sharing that with us, and we will have to look into that after the show. And a huge thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Hoodoo, Texas, yet again. He said, taking out nuke sites will not stop the Iranian regime. How does the U.S. get the regime built on religious fanaticism to fall?
Well, you just conduct enough airstrikes until they're gone. Or you go in on the ground. That's really the way to have a surefire success of removing that government. The aftermath of that, though, might not be pretty. But you can remove the government if you go in on the ground. It would take a lot of money, a lot of effort, a lot of time, really. But you could do it. But airstrikes right now would probably be the most straightforward sort of an answer, and probably the one that's going to have the least amount of success, if we're being honest. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Live Animal, who puts in a 5. They said, I'm tired of heads of states like China and Iran threatening all-out war while enjoying luxury in their palaces, and they treat war like a light topic.
Yeah, I would agree. They certainly do treat war like a light topic. But whenever people treat war like a light topic, we really just have to return that in kind. Like, at least towards them, treat it like a light topic. Be like, oh, you want a war? We'll give you one. It's like, and then see what they do. They'll usually back off at that point, because usually it's just nothing but bravado. Once an actual legitimate threat starts to coalesce, they usually start to back off. Because I am one that believes in equal escalatory actions, because they're going to blink eventually. It's just about getting them to the level or to the point that they become stressed out enough about it that they blink, and then they'll back off, and then we usually end up in a pretty good position. And so with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Large Pizza, and thank you very much, Large Pizza. They said, I'm getting my firearm license next week here in Canada, and what would be a good suggestion for a first firearm to buy? I'm thinking about an SKS. Damn. Okay. And thanks, LSA.
I mean, SKS isn't too bad. I mean, that's a pretty decent little fellow right there. Like, this is
when you start with a pistol, though.
Nah, rifle. I would say rifle is the best starting weapon to have. Pistols are really hard, like to shoot, to aim, like everything about them, even to clean. I find them more difficult. I would say that a rifle would be a pretty easy sort of a thing to do. Honestly, since you're in Canada, Matthew, don't they have the 10-round limit in Canada?
Not totally sure. I know it's a California thing.
Let's see here. Let's see. Canada firearm restrictions. Let me check for you here really quickly, because I want to see if I can give you some cool recommendations. Let's see. Firearm restrictions in Canada. It doesn't really look like there are those types of restrictions that would be in other US states. So, if you wanted something like an SKS, let's see, you're probably looking for something affordable. So, let's see, let me think. An SKS is actually a pretty decent, affordable sort of surplus rifle, to be entirely frank. That's actually a really good first pick. If I was to go with something within like that $600 to $700 range, which SKSs are probably going for these days, I would say that probably one of the best things that you could get for that sort of a value. Damn, I'm really trying to rake my brain here, because not a lot of firearms these days are like around the $700 mark. A lot of them are all up in like the thousands now, like 1,000 or above. I mean, a Mosin would be a pretty neat one, like a Mosin Nagant rifle. I had one of these. You need to make sure to check these before you get one, though, because some of them can have really gummy bolts, where when you fire it a little bit, the brass shells start to expand in the chamber, and then it basically makes it to where you can't open the bolt, so you have to go get a rubber mallet and start slamming the bolt like a caveman. So that is a bit of a drawback on these, so you got to really check the Mosin that you get and make sure that's a good one, and that you're using steel cased ammo instead of brass case, because I had a million problems with brass cased ammo. Another one that you could get And I don't like this one's kind of getting on up there, but an M1 Garand, if you can find one in Canada, which you probably can, these are really good in my opinion. I love them. You have to make sure to get the right ammo for them, though. You have to get M2 ball because any higher pressure than that, you can actually bend the op rod on this thing, and then it becomes basically a bolt action. These are great, though. Love them. 30-06 is a really fun round. It's a nice rifle in the hands. It feels good. If you didn't want to get one of these, though, and you want to get something new off the shelf that was kind of like it, I would say go and try and find a Springfield Armory M1A Garand. It's basically like an M14 pretty much. But they're pretty cool, and they're pretty neat. So I would recommend something like that if you're looking for something in the category of an SKS. And I also cannot profess this enough. Anything that is made on our continent here in the Americas, it's usually going to be higher quality than the Chinese and the Russian stuff. In my personal experience, unless if that gun is a kit gun that was then built by an armorer here in America, they're usually going to be lower quality. Like, they're going to have a lot of weird quirks and issues. My SKS that I had way back in the day, it would eject the 10th round without even firing it or chambering it every time. Or basically the last round in the magazine, it would just eject it without even chambering it. And then it would also jam a good bit. And the Mosin did that as well. And I kind of learned that a lot of the Chinese or Soviet stuff is very low quality. So I would generally say that most things American or Canadian made, if you are in that price bracket, those are generally better, in my opinion. I found them to be a lot more enjoyable to shoot and better made. But anyways, with that, also one other thing, you can always, of course, get like a normal AR-15 or something like that. I don't know if that's legal in Canada. I think y'all might have some restrictions on that, but I think that they're always very decent. Or you get an AK, like that's also an option. But anyways, I hope that has addressed it the best I can. A big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Marion Deemer, who puts in a $20 support. And thank you very much, Marion, as well, for that support. And Marion said, NES from UKENIW?
And I thank you for the support, Marion Deemer. And unfortunately, I don't know what that means, but I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $5 support from I Will Eat Your Hot Dogs Yet Again, who put in a 5 and said, wait, was that Konami or whatever his name is and playing GTA and Rush After Fleeing?
Yeah, maybe. It might have been. But a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that has addressed that well. And we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Cachulian343, who said, gonna be honest, he's got no business complaining about, large people in the military or calling reporters piggy when they're also morbidly obese.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, when you're a general, obviously not being morbidly obese. Now, being morbidly obese is unacceptable, but being overweight isn't really that much of an issue because a general is not going to be a general in the modern day. A general in any point in history has hardly ever been physically fit, if I'm just being upfront. Like, if you look at General Schwarzkopf was not that far off from looking like Tony Soprano. I mean, let me go get a picture of him.
Man, also, we got to cut these answers down. It's 11:30, and we got like 15 or 20 more super chats to go.
All right. But anyways, he's not exactly buff. You know, he doesn't look like he's got a six-pack ab under that, and he doesn't have to, because generals aren't going to be in a role to need that. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to David Ford, who puts in a 5. He said, do you think the Chinese photographer praised the government, donated enough blood, and helped enough old ladies across the street for 1,000 points?
I mean, maybe. It's possible. But a big thanks to you for the support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Aaron Weatherington, who puts in a 5 as well. He said, don't think it's just about us or U.S. taking over Cuba. It's more of locking down our hemisphere and not allowing Chinese and Russian influence in the region.
I would say that's definitely more so the approach that's being taken, but I feel like if we're going to have that approach in the Americas, it ought to be across the globe, not just in America, because there's a lot of strategically far more valuable things that we need to protect overseas than here in America right now, like, say, Cuba. Like, Europe is more important than the Cubans are at the moment. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Adam McLean. And thank you very much, Adam, for that support. He said, your take on Atlantic City, the history of it, and what it is today, if you have a comment. And I'd love to hear it.
Unfortunately, we are running really low on time, as you heard just a minute ago, so I don't really think I'd be able to get into that. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Corn Pop. And thank you very much, Corn Pop, for that support as well. He said, I don't want to pay for rebuilding them after every hurricane.
And I don't know what that's in particular. Oh, Cuba. Well, that would be the insurance companies. I'm sure the insurance companies just wouldn't include that in their policies like they do in Florida now. But a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And also a big shout out to Camille Morgan for putting in a 5 and saying LSA.
Hey, and LSA. And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Taoist Auditor who said, if you want tides, Broome, Australia sees differences of 10 meters. And on the East Coast, we get around 2 to 3 meters.
Dang, that's crazy. 10 meters, that's like 30-something feet. I mean, that's actually insane right there. I would like to see something like that. I've never seen extremely crazy tides like that because down in the Gulf, the tides were never really that big. Usually you could hardly even tell a difference, honestly. But a huge thanks to you so much, though, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, the Secret Vault threw in another 20-pound support. And thank you very much, good sir, for the 3rd support of the night. He said, Enforcer Official, you're correct. Google Earth 3D shows tailings dumped, not quarried. My bad. I made a mistake. Hats off to you. And by the way, aliens are real. I am half alien, no joke. The something blood type, alien genetics, and LSA.
And thank you so much for the support, the Secret Vault, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say, generally, I always know my rock piles well, whether they're dug out or whether they're dropped. But still, a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $5 support from Taoist Auditor yet again, who said, language lesson. Australia is called Strela or Oz locally. We speak strain, not English, and there is enough of us following.
Oh, that's pretty interesting, actually. And yeah, Australia or Oz, really cool names. And the land down under is a very cool place. But a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Tom Stoles, and he did not leave a comment, but thank you very much, Tom, for that $5 support. And we also have a $3 support from Plazath, and we appreciate the both of you, Tom and Plazath, for that support, and we do appreciate that. We also have a 2 from Hoodoo, Texas, who said, is Russia collapsing or coiling like a snake?
Generally collapsing. They're definitely not getting ready to strike. They're running out of steam every month. So I would say they're generally just dying off at this point. But a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 2 from Jade Anonymous. And thank you very much, Jade, for that support. They said, for the show.
And thank you so much for the support. And thank you for helping us to keep the show running. And we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 2 from Bruce Lee, who said, will money from the U.S. company to Lukoil be seized by sanctions?
I don't believe so. I think that's actually going to be approved in a court, and they probably won't try and seize that money. Because then at that point, nobody's getting anything out of the deal. So I hope that does address it the best I can. And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 2 from Pleasure Burn, who said, take one from the chat, please. And we shall take one from the chat. Thank you very much, Pleasure Burn, for that support. And the live chat question is going to go to DG, who said, any updates with General Zhang Yuzhao and any thoughts about that supposed letter?
Zhang Yuzhao most likely did what they said he did, or it was just some sort of a guides for anti-corruption actions, or not anti-corruption actions, but pretty much tamping down any dissent by getting rid of dissenters. And I haven't heard of a letter that he's written, and I would doubt that the Chinese would allow for him to write a letter that would then be published to the public, so that way there was any form of discourse where they were no longer in control of the narrative about what's going on with them. But I do thank you so much for the support and sponsoring the live chat and helping us to keep this thing running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Bigfoot and the Bunny, who puts in a 2. They said, did China release satellite photos of the U.S. Armada?
As in the Lincoln Carrier Strike Group, they did, back when they were in the Strait of Malacca. But since then, we haven't really seen any satellite pictures provided by the Chinese of the Carrier Group, at least publicly at the moment. So I hope that does address it the best I can, and a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And also a big shout out to Truck and Chef, who put in a 2. He said, just jumping in an hour into the broadcast.
Hey, and welcome in. Better late than never, is what I always say. And I gotta thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And also a big shout out to Jesus Crisco, who put in a 2. He said he loves money.
Hey, don't we all? But I try and make sure to tamp that down. But it's still a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to none other than Bruce Lee, who puts in a 2. And thank you very much, Bruce, as well. He said, I technically, wait a minute, I can't repeat that one right there. That's crazy right there. He said, when it comes to Coca-Cola, cherry or vanilla and quack?
I would say probably cherry. I haven't actually had either of those. I've just had normal Coke, and that's it. So I would say probably cherry, at least in my opinion. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one also goes to the Secret Vault yet again, who put in a £5 donation, and we appreciate that very much. They said, Enforcer isn't sure about aliens, but I'm poor, but donate. My name right here is Matthew Williams. I made crop circles for the aliens. Only person ever arrested for circles.
Huh, that's pretty
They arrested you for making a crop circle?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy being arrested for crop circles. I mean, but I do thank you for supporting and sharing that with us. Very interesting stuff. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And with that, folks, it is now at the very end of our Super Chat questions. And thank you all once again for helping to support the channel and keep us running. And we do appreciate that very much, of course. And it's now time to get to the live chat questions and all of our Morse code decoders of the night. And tonight, we had a whole roster. We had Paul, Kevin, Mason, Joni Dog, Norm, Pritchett, Arabelle Garbo, Royal Fluffiness, Kush Coberterix, Sire, and Brian Blairstown. They said the Morse says a whole bunch of coordinates and LLT, LSA.
And ding, 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 ding. And that's the sound of money. Y'all got that dent on the nail. That is the Morse code message of the night. And the coordinates were actually supposed to show the specific little spot right here in the Lavazon neighborhood, right here. This little opening of this tunnel right here. And y'all got that dent on the nail. So I got to congratulate y'all greatly for getting that correct. Because the Lee Spring Army Snow Corps gets that Morse code message correct time and time again. Has gotten it correct for pretty much 1,438 days straight. And I got to congratulate y'all on that. Because not a lot of people know how to read Morse code. I myself don't even really know how to read it. Yet y'all are always getting it correct all the time. So with that, we are now going to be moving on into another Super Chat. And then, folks, due to time constraints, we'll only be getting 3 live chat questions, and then we'll be rounding out this stream for the night. So what do we got?
And also, a big shout out to Crispy, who threw in another $10 support. And we do appreciate you very much, Crispy, for throwing in that support and helping to keep the channel running. And in honor of Crispy, we are moving into our live chat questions. And getting into our first one here, this one goes to Boom Chow, who said, how does Russia plan on recouping its losses from the war?
They generally don't. They're expecting to recuperate their losses by gaining Ukraine in a major strategic advantage, but they aren't going to ever get that, so at this point, there really is no plan to recoup losses. So I hope that does address that the best I can, and with that, we're on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to True North, who said, do you guys think that if Iran falls, that Iraq would try to seize territory?
No. I mean, everyone always wonders if another country's going to seize territory if another one goes into governmental crisis, and the answer to that is 9 times out of 10, really more so 10 times out of 10, no, because there's really no land claim to have there, and generally that would be condemned globally as an illegal invasion of territory that is technically not sovereign territory of the Republic of Iraq. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion, and with that, we are on into the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is going to be Avari Mendebratis, who said, would the U.S. force China to sail around the Cape for anything going to or from Venezuela?
Yes, generally we would, because we would not want the Chinese to have a quick access to Venezuela with military warships, and I believe that the Panamanian government could actually deny that access if the U.S. put pressure on them. So we would generally make them sail all the way around South America and the Horn, basically, to be able to get to Venezuela. So I hope that does address that the best I possibly can, and we've reached the end of the stream tonight. I gotta thank you all so much once again for watching. We had a peak viewership tonight of 16,000 people. That's a lot of people. And we had a total viewership of 125,000 people who have watched this stream tonight. We're always entirely honored and greatly appreciative of all of y'all enjoying this stream. And of course, always helping us to keep the channel running. We will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world. And if there is enough news to make a short war video, I, the Enforcer, will be the one making that short war video. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, Haram Slava, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, we will see you all tomorrow on that short war video, maybe midday if there's enough news to cover, and definitely on the 10 p.m. Eastern live stream once again tomorrow to cover the rest of the breaking news throughout the day. And of course, we are still on high alert for the next 2 days at least to see if the U.S. is going to do something over the weekend. But in the meantime, though, we will see you all on the next one. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Hiram Slava, get some rest, and good night.
Army shall stand.